Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the astrology of April 2026. Happy spring equinox. Hopefully you're having a great, wonderful beginning to spring. We've got the ingress of the sun into Aries as I'm recording this today on March the 20th. Hope you're doing well out there. There's a lot going on in the collective. We've got the sun applying to Neptune today and then to Saturn coming up, and then as I'm recording this, Mercury is stationing direct in Pisces, so there's a lot of emotions flowing in the collective today. I know I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the weight of it today, and we'll see if we can get through this astrology and see if we can prepare ourselves for the month ahead, because there's a lot going on. There's some heavy stuff coming astrologically, and a lot of things that maybe this study of the stars, this study of astrology, this study of symbols can maybe help us to get into the right mindset and preparation, and start to see how we can create balance in a time when it might be hard to come by. So I'm just going to welcome a few friends before we get rolling here today. Thank you so much for stopping in today. Rachel Fletcher is here. What's up, Rachel? It says happy spring from Road Oak, Virginia. Nice to see you, Rachel. Hope everything's going. You're well, my friend. Hope that you're having a wonderful beginning to the spring season over there. And looking forward to connecting again soon, friend. Stephen the Jupiterian says, good afternoon to you, Spencer. Happy autumnal equinox? I think it's the vernal equinox, but good to see you here, Stephen. Either way, maybe we got Mercury'd a little bit. I think it's the vernal equinox, but I digress. But yes, happy equinox to you, friend, and hope everything's going well your way. Rose is here. What's up, Rose? Says, howdy all. Nice to see you, Rose. Hope everything's going well with you today. Rose says, P.S. Love your background cover image. Yeah, this is, I don't know if it's a image. It's just the background. Like it's got a beautiful plant back there. Is that what you're referring to? My beautiful plant that seems to come in and out of focus if I wave my hand over here. Yeah, thanks, friend. Hope everything's going well your way. Happy spring, Steven says. There you go. We got it, right? Sometimes it's hard to know what season we're in, especially in Michigan, because one day it's 70 degrees, the next day it's 17 degrees. It's just fluctuating. It's all a mess right now, so we're all trying to figure it out. Rose says, using the vertical instead of the landscape mode, I see. Am I? I don't know. Maybe you clicked on that link. Maybe there's two different links to this. If you are just joining us, there's two different ways to experience the broadcast today. One is landscape mode. The other is the mobile version. So whatever way that you're, I guess, connecting with us today, there is a mode for you. So yeah. Raj is here. What's up, Raj? Says, hi, Spencer. Nice to see you, Raj. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. It's been a little while since we connected, so hope everything's going well your way, bud. Steven says, happy Aries season. Yes, it's the first day of Aries season for sure. Lucy444 says here, it's nice to see you, Lucy. Hope everything's going well your way. I love the picture of your beautiful kitty there. Rose says, waiting on your waiting image, rainy spring flowers. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yes, okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, that was kind of neat, wasn't it? Like a little in my area of Michigan, April is a rainy season. So, you know, the April showers bring May flowers type of thing. That was the vibe I was going for today. It had kind of this ethereal sunlight, rain kind of flower imagery. So yeah, thanks, Rose. Appreciate it. Steven says, it feels like summer here in San Francisco. Yeah, it's warming up here. Again, it's a little bit, it's a little bipolar in Michigan when it comes to the weather. That's just swinging, you know, really, really widely back and forth. Kakakita is here. I like that. That's a great name. Kakita? Kakakita. That's a mouthful. Oh boy. Well, thanks for joining us, friend. I love that when we have new friends joining on. Okay. Rose says, I'm on the laptop. I only do landscape. Nice. All right, friends. Thanks for stopping in. Thanks for letting me know that you're here. Appreciate all of you. Appreciate all the comments and all the questions and all the participation today. We, of course, today are going to be talking about the astrology of April 2026. We've got a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to do my best that I can to get you up to date on the lunations, the ingresses of planets into new signs, solar phases, planets emerging from under the beams, going under the beams. We've got out of bounds planets. We do have one malefic enclosure this month. We've got a big Aries stellium. So we'll get to all that. A couple announcements before we start, though, if you will indulge me in some of the business that we have to do here. Of course, I am Spencer. I am your local friendly astrologer here on YouTube or wherever you're consuming this podcast / content. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. I do readings. I do mythological-based, tarot-based, traditional astrology-based, integrative divinatory readings. You can learn more about your life story that has been cycling through your entire life, trying to unpack some of the repetitive patterns and maybe create a new pattern around that. That's something that I love to help people to do. I love to help people bring balance to their lives. If you're feeling out of balance or off-centered, I love being kind of an accountability partner for that and reflecting back to you some of those challenges, but also trying to help you to nurture you through those as well. So go check out spencermichaud.com and click the book now button if you would like to work together. I do transit readings as well if you're trying to prepare for the next few months ahead, but we can also go on a deeper dive as well. So check it out, book now button, spencermichaud.com. I would love to work with you. You can also visit the store at my website, which has pre-recorded webinars, a lot of which the material I talk about on the channel. But if you'd like to go deeper and if you'd like to support the channel, purchasing a webinar is a great way to do so. I have a 12 webinar series on the decans of all 36 decans that we talk about here on the channel quite regularly. You can find that in the store. I have a series that I did with my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, called Dignity and Devotion, which we talk about the 7 traditional planets and creating a magical practice around those. And then I have another webinar that is breaking down the connection between tarot and astrology called Stars and Cards. So visit the store for that. I also have a new class that I am launching in the next week and a half or so. And this is our guided group study of the Silmarillion. Now, for those of you unfamiliar, the Silmarillion is in the Lord of the Rings Middle-earth universe. It is kind of the origin story for all of the kind of events that happened in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. It's kind of a mythos, the legendarium. It's showing you the creation of Middle-earth and the gods and sort of almost like the religious background behind Middle-earth. It's very, very interesting. It's very cool. We're going to be going on a journey with that book soon. We've got a great group of people that are going to be joining us. I hope that you'll join me. Go click on the book now button in the website to sign up. There is a tuition, but if you are feeling a little pinched financially, just reach out. There is pay what you can options. I would just love to have some more people jump on and go on this journey with us. So please don't let the finances be an object, but I would love for you to join us. Guided group study, the Silmarillion, is going to start on March the 30th, okay, which is a week from Monday. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me at spencermichaudastrology@gmail.com. I also have a beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, who has a magical business. It is called Third Coast Mojo, and she runs that out of Etsy. She has a number of excellent offerings that can help you through some of the challenging astrology, especially of April, when we have a lot of things stacking up in Aries. One of the features this week and month, etc., is Venus in Libra called Serene Queen. I'm wearing some Serene Queen right now because I've just been feeling a little bit of the weight of the kind of the Aries stuff in the collective and just the collective in general. It doesn't have to be Aries in general, but when we do have a lot of planets in Aries, including Saturn, Venus in Libra helps bring some balance, helps bring some centeredness. It helps keep us calm when there's chaos around us. So this is a great one that you can see is filled with wonderful, beautiful, calming herbs, nervines, etc. There is some, what is this here? We've got some, what is this blue stone here? I feel like I should know the name of this, but my brain's sort of shorting out today. I think it is, I can't remember. I'm not doing a great job of selling it, but the oil itself is very good. Check it out. You also could check out some of the features from her Jupiter and Cancer election, which is Exalted Jupiter, Divine Dream, a dream oil. There's a Sugar Daddy oil if you're trying to grease the wheels of prosperity in your life. There's a Venus in Libra Glamour Magic soap that is available right now. And then if you're trying to kind of mitigate some of the challenges of Saturn in Aries, Saturn in Aquarius, its home domicile, its home sign. Scientific method is a great way to bring some big picture thinking, to bring some objectivity and some patience back into our world where everything feels like we have to do it now or we're going to get left behind. All sorts of great stuff. Go support her over at Third Coast Mojo. You can also find me at my newsletter. So if you subscribe to the newsletter, you can get updates on when we're going live. You can also get updates on new products and offerings from Third Coast Mojo. So make sure to sign up for that. And if you want to support the channel, you can purchase a super chat today while I'm live on YouTube, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and become a patron of the channel over there. All of your support is very, very helpful. It is an honor and a pleasure to be able to serve you here on this channel, and your donations go a long way to keeping me doing this work. The easiest thing you can do right off the bat is like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell to know when we are going live, and share it with your friends. You know, share this with your friends if you think this would benefit somebody. Word of mouth is a great way to spread the word. All right, friends, those are our announcements. Thank you for hanging out. We'll just check back in the chat here. Rachel says, I am stoked for the Silmarillion. I am too, Rachel. I need a fantasy, I need some fantasy engagement right now. Reality is a little bit hard, a little bit overwhelming. I have been watching a lot of television lately, and I've been, oh, okay. Tanya says, aquamarine is the stone for serene queens. I know, it should be so obvious. And just having a senior moment, I guess, or a middle-aged moment with that. But thank you, Tanya, aka Third Coast Mojo, aka Freshtopia. Here's her beautiful face, the face behind Third Coast Mojo. Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate you. I've been watching a lot of TV lately, Rachel, and we've been watching a lot of Karate Kid and like nostalgic stuff from the 80s, Cobra Kai, the series that talks about middle age, what happens after the 80s when the 80s are done, and you have to, like, you know, take those sensibilities from that time and try to make sense of it in our modern time frame. It's really interesting. It's really an interesting exploration of aging and of middle age and of parenting and of what teenagers face these days and in the past, etc. It's really amazing. I've also been watching a show called A Different World. For those of you who are unfamiliar, it was a show in the late 80s, early 90s that was a spin-off of The Cosby Show that starred Lisa Bonet, aka Denise Huxtable, and just finished season 1. And I got to tell you that it's kind of silly, but I didn't realize that Lisa Bonet wasn't continuing on from season 1 to season 2. And I'm actually feeling some real sadness and some real parasocial abandonment today from realizing that she's not going to be in the show anymore. And that's bringing up a lot of really interesting questions about the state of our reality, the state of how we differentiate between reality and fiction and illusion. A lot of those themes are coming to us via Neptune and Aries and things of that nature. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. And parasocial relationships. I've got a lot on my mind about artificial intelligence today and what that might mean for us moving into the future, and what it means to be human, and what it means to be moving through our worlds. And, on some level, even the relationship I have with everyone here today is somewhat of a parasocial relationship where we are connecting in this very weird way of ones and zeros. We have a relationship each week, but it's kind of different than an in-person relationship, but it might feel like we are connected in a deep way, which we are on some level. But there's a lot of philosophical things going on in my brain around those types of relationships. So maybe we can incorporate that into the astrology and see if the astrology can guide us through making sense of that. But if that type of thing resonates with you, let me know in the chat today. Let me know what's going on with all of you in the collective, because I'm feeling like just a weight today. Rachel says, I love Serene Queen. Oh, I love that, Rachel. It is really good stuff. I try to wear that oil almost every day because it really does help keep me grounded. It keeps my nervous system healthy, I think. I think that there's a lot of energy that flows through me and through all of us, really. And being able to stay centered and stay grounded when your eyes are very open and when you are receiving a lot of information and emotions, it can be really healing and helpful to have something like that to keep our nervous system, keep it going, right? Rose says, if we have done the Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell studies, why would we want this different one? Not familiar with Middle Earth topic. That's interesting that you mentioned Power of Myth. I just saw a little thing with Joseph Campbell talking to Bill Moyers today. But this is different. The Power of Myth is the hero's journey, right? With Joseph Campbell, who was talking about the monomyth. Middle Earth is Lord of the Rings. That's a completely constructed world by Tolkien that we can inhabit to learn some of the things that Joseph Campbell was trying to teach us through the monomyth. A lot of it we can see through the stories that come to us through Middle Earth and through the world of the Lord of the Rings, highlight a lot of the studies that Joseph Campbell made us aware of through that. And we talk about that a lot in class too, the hero's journey. So it is one example of the hero's journey. So it's just at this point, it is a fun thing to do that is where we can incorporate a knowledge of astrology, where we can incorporate our worldviews within that as well, and see how sometimes fantasy stories can help teach us how to live better in reality too. Sometimes they can be inspirations for us. So this is part of the reason we're doing that and going and continuing that journey. Plus, it's just fun. I think sometimes we need some fun things when everything else is feeling like it's kind of disintegrating underneath our feet, the structure. I just really enjoy it. I guess that's really the simple answer. Javiera is here. What's up? Javiera says, hola, Spencer and friends. Nice to see you here, Javiera. Okay, we've got an aquamarine. Tanya, yes, hello, Tanya. Rachel says, I hear that. I've been indulging in young adult paranormal books from the 90s. Yeah, I mean, when reality gets let's not beat around the bush, when reality is as fucked up as it is right now, friends, if we're paying attention, a little bit of escapism is sometimes necessary to keep us going. That doesn't mean that we completely bury our heads in the sand and we ignore the things that are going around us. It just means that every once in a while we might want to inhabit a little bit of a different, pardon the pun, a different world. I literally am inhabiting a different world on TV or through books or whatnot. I think some of those things can help us get out of the fight or flight response. I think that when we're experiencing the barrage of challenges that we are in the collective right now, whether it is through war, whether it is through economic uncertainty, whether it's through the rise of authoritarianism and fascism, whether it's through an uncertain future with technology and artificial intelligence, it can be so overwhelming that we get stuck in that fight or flight response. And by engaging with things like cherished books or memories like from our past, TV shows that are comfort shows, it helps us to turn down the volume of that temporarily so that when we are faced with crises that we have to deal with directly, we have the energy to do so. And I think it's really important not to feel guilty about doing some of those things and not to feel like that is a frivolous activity, because I'm a firm believer of balance in life. And if all we're experiencing is the horrors of being incarnated in a body and being human, there's no balance in that. We have to find joy. Sometimes we have to make joy for ourselves. And I think a little bit of this is trying to make joy when some of the things we're seeing around us are just trying to bleed it dry from us, literally and figuratively. Javier says, I watched the new Scrubs, missed it. Okay, that'll be fun. I haven't seen that yet, but might be a good one to engage with. Rose says, I have an aquamarine ring I love too. Oh, nice. That was a weird sort of brain fart that I had there. I know what that rock is. I know the name of that. It just was escaping me. But a lovely, lovely stone that is incorporated in the Serene Queen election and in the oil itself in the bottle that you get as well. Javier says, so interested in that topic since I'm a loner on the fringes. Yeah, Javier, and at the risk of going too far deep down this rabbit hole, I was talking about this with my partner today, about feeling like being raised by things like culture, television, books, etc. And a lot of us who are kind of fringe, lonely, loner kids, hermits, we had these relationships with the figures on the television screen, with the heroes on the movie screen, with the characters in our books in these cherished created worlds. And a lot of us who live in the liminal spaces, a lot of 12th house, 9th house, 3rd house, 6th house type folks, those relationships become real to us. Those of us who have a bit of animism, right? A bit of an ability to see spirit in anything, right? In an animal, in an object, in a television show. Our imaginations are very active, and we find a lot of comfort through that. And those relationships take on a lot of importance. And sometimes, even when things are imaginary, the disappointments that we feel through our stories can help us to process very real emotions that we are feeling. I told Tanya today, I was like, why do I feel so bad that like Denise Huxtable isn't on a different world anymore, like 30 or 40 years later, just this moment in time. And I was like, I think it's kind of tapping into some of my core abandonment issues. Like I have some real trauma around a lot of people in my family just kind of disappearing overnight, like with my parents getting divorced and remarried and things of that nature, and having some time away from my mom for a few years when I was very young. And even though it's just not a quote unquote real relationship, it still triggers some of those feelings of losing something, right? Of losing something that was important to you, that brought you comfort. So I think that this is this has to be a theme that's coming through the astrology today, because astrology speaks to us through culture as well. It speaks to us through the media that we consume. It speaks to us through the symbols that we see all around us. It speaks to us through the stories that we hear. All of it is omen. We're just awash in omen all the time. And it really pays to pay attention to the things that are coming through you and the feelings that you have, and connecting it and trying to make those spiritual connections through that. And that's what we do through the language of astrology. But we can also do it through all sorts of different things that we become entrained to over time. Rose says, never saw those. I used the 82 Archetypes by Caroline Miss. I'll have to check that out. Rose says, I prefer courage, and my cardinal energies lean in to help in numerous areas. I mean, that's lovely if you can tap into that. Sometimes we have courage on some days, and some days we feel bad. And it's all good. It's all part of the human experience. Sometimes we can't wash away the negative feelings right away. And we have to acknowledge those things rather than try to gloss it over, to spiritually bypass the things where we're having a bad day, Tanya says, hi, Rachel and everyone in the extended Spencer verse, kind of popping in and out today, but sending so much good energy and care to everyone. Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate you. Thank you for your support today. We should have had you on the show, but Tanya's got work to do. She's packing all those orders for Third Coast Mojo. Thank you for everyone who's been supporting the business. And thank you, Tanya, for supporting us in the chat today. Javier says, just meaning, I'm also feeling these nostalgic vibes, gentle and calm media. Yeah, there's a lot of nostalgia going on in the collective right now. I'm not sure where that's coming from in particular, if it's just my chart or if it's through everyone else feeling this on some level. Rose says, I was raised as an only child. Me too, Rose. A lot of us only children have some of these kind of experiences. And going back to Javier's point about nostalgic vibes, I think that the nostalgia for me, the revisiting of these things, it kind of happened by accident. But I would also say, as I'm looking towards an uncertain future, as I'm seeing the dissolving of our institutions, of our government, of our environment, of our internet, of our information, of our privacy, there is something very attractive about living in a time or a space that feels a slightly more innocent before those dystopian things started to take over. I know that that's not a place to live forever. We can't get so stuck in the nostalgia that we ignore what's going on around us or try to change it for the better. But I do think that there is something very attractive about those things when you start to see the crumbling of the institutions of society that the world is literally changing underneath our feet right now. Those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, etc., that world really no longer exists on some level. And I know that this is not necessarily unique to this generation. I think that every generation that ages goes eventually, I think, comes to a point where they don't recognize the world that they grew up in. I do think it is becoming more extreme, the dichotomy between the world that we grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and into where we're heading today. It's so, so different. And I'm feeling a little bit of the sun applying to Neptune today, the disillusionment that comes along with that, the disillusionment of, I'll tell you, friends, just of the monetization of everything and of the exploitation of our attention, the exploitation of our creativity, the exploitation of our thinking to try to manipulate us into doing what profit wants us to do, what corporatism wants us to do. And I'm just really feeling strong sadness around that, and feeling a little bit stuck too, feeling a little bit stuck about what the next steps are around that. I think because even just being here today with you, we are on a giant corporate platform called YouTube that is owned by a giant corporate entity called Google. And it just feels awkward trying to figure out, where do we belong when we are so beholden to these large power structures, to these large corporate entities, to the tech industry. A lot of those things flying around in my head right now, and the paradox of wanting to be present and wanting to show up for this community, but also not wanting to participate in the monetization of our creativity, of the taking away of our humanity through these methods, of not wanting to be manipulated by these systems. All of those things are leading to a feeling of being pulled in a lot of different directions. And that might be something that we really start to feel as we move into April as well. Okay, I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly here, since we got to kind of get started here. Rose says, rock people, tree people, etc. As an only child, we infused a lot of meaning into the things around us. Paintings by Mare is here. Ooh, beautiful profile picture. That is a lovely, lovely polar bear that you have there, Mare. So Mare does wonderful animal portraits. So go support her over there. Thank you for joining us here today. Javier says, yeah, I just can't verbalize it well, so I'm a bit misunderstood. We all are in the Pisces birth canal. Yeah, I felt that transition from Pisces to Aries. Maybe we'll start to dry out a little bit, but I was feeling the swinging in wide directions of the Pisces 3, the final degrees of that decan, where we have the extremes of ecstasy and the depths of despair, which is a lot of wide swinging of emotions that come through that. Rose says, my Neptune has been diving into visual art, creativity, and poetry. Well, that's good. That's a good way. It's a good way to get some of those feelings out, for sure. I need to re-engage with some of that myself. Stephen says, I can relate to the loss of people and change. Mom and dad are now in assisted living after my mom had her 3rd stroke this past February. I'm sorry, Stephen. My mother also had a stroke towards the end of her life, and it changed a lot of who she was and what she could do, and it's really painful to watch that sometimes. So sending you and your parents some love and compassion, friend. Mare says, I'm glad I'm catching the live, just settling into my paintings now. Oh, thanks for joining us, Mare. Thank you for having us on while you create. I love that we're part of the creation process, maybe some small part of it. Stephen says, loss of my childhood home, Aries in my 5th house, working on artistic and writing projects. I love it. Rose says, nostalgia. I've been watching 2 series, Downtown Abbey and Little House on the Prairie versus Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. All great. All great. We all have things that trigger that for us, right? We all have our comfort shows, our comfort books, our comfort zones, whatever it is. Sometimes it's just a place, walking out in the woods or something like that too. So, okay. Astrological New Year, Stephen says. He says he was in his 20s in the 80s and 90s. Well, you were a little bit further along in the journey, but still, we still have some nostalgic for that. Rose says, in a few, says, I will DM you a segment on the program if you'll help your perspective. I watched it live. I'll appreciate that, friend. All right. Let's go. Thank you, friends. Steven's been watching Bridgerton. That's a good one. Okay. Thank you, friends, sorry for the extra long introduction, but I thought there were some things I had to get out as far as the vibes, right? Sometimes astrology is connecting symbols with the things that we're feeling, connecting the vibes with the things that we see in the chart. And I think by maybe giving some context in the vibes that I'm feeling, maybe that'll help us to see what the astrology is trying to teach us as we break down some of the thoughts around April. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate you, friend. Okay, so big picture thoughts for April. Let's start looking into April. We still have to live through some of March as I'm recording this, but we're looking ahead here to get prepared emotionally. There is a big stellium in Aries in April. We are going to have multiple planets: Mars, Mercury, the Sun, Neptune, Saturn, Chiron, or smaller bodies if you want to split hairs about it, moving through Aries. We will have a moon in Aries. We're going to have a big meetup of these planets towards the end of the month that I think will be a very pivotal moment in the world's history, potentially, but especially in the United States. I know that the United States political circumstances and actions are having global consequences. So I think that I will break that down a little bit for you today. But a big stack up of planets in Aries. What does that mean? It means that we have a lot of pressure, or we might feel a lot of pressure to make a new beginning. There's a lot of yang energy. There is maybe not a lot of patience. There is something that we're trying to separate from to begin something new. And I think that in this Pisces season that we're bringing to a close as of today on the spring equinox, I think we're trying to get clear about what we want to create. We want to get clear on what we want to leave behind. Maybe we need to look to the past so that we can understand our future on some level as well. But I do think during this last kind of eclipse portal, I guess you could call it, that's the only time I'm really comfortable using the word portal. I think eclipses are definitely portals. All the other portals are just kind of made up new age stuff, in my opinion. If they work for you, that's fine. I don't want to totally rain on your parade, but that's just my humble opinion. But a lot of the things we were working through in eclipse season was just really getting clear on what we believe in. And to do that, we sometimes have to be shown the opposite of what we believe in. And that can be really painful sometimes to get clarity around that. We've been clearing the decks. We've been removing old beliefs. We've been removing old stuff. I've been talking a lot on the channel about being able to work through organizing my home and letting go of old things. But I think that the most powerful thing is letting go of old beliefs that shape our reality. So this Aries stellium is what we've been kind of clearing the decks for on some level. So we will talk a lot about that as we get towards the middle and the end of the month. But I want you to know that that's coming, that time period between April the 18th and April the 22nd is extremely, extremely, I would say volatile is a pretty good word. There is a kind of an ignition, sort of a match that's being lit around that period of time with a Mars-Saturn conjunction that's coming together. And the Mercury malefic enclosure plays in that as well. Mercury, Mars, and Saturn are all coming together around the same degrees. And I will explain why those degrees are very sensitive in the first 10-degree section of Aries. Saturn emerges from under the beams in April. It is going to be becoming visible. We've talked about this in some previous broadcasts, but in traditional astrology, we like to focus quite a bit, at least I do, on the synodic cycle of planets. When they are becoming visible out of the beams of the sun, when they're going into the beams of the sun, and when they're making what is called the Cazimi moment, renewing themselves in the heart or the furnace of the sun, burning away the old cycle and planting the inspiration for the new cycle. Saturn is going to be Cazimi on March the 25th. So before as we're recording this, we haven't had Saturn's Cazimi yet. But it is going to be planting that seed. That's next Wednesday from when I'm recording this. And then Saturn's going to emerge from the beams in the first weeks of April. So pay attention to what happens next Wednesday, the 25th of March, and the seeds that are planted, and something will become visible on April 11th around that. So that this is very important because a lot of times when Saturn is going under the beams, as it is right now as I'm recording it, some of the structures around society start to crumble. Some of the structures of our personal lives start to crumble. And then we get a seed for the new structure. Saturn loves to structure things. And then when it emerges from the beams, we're starting to implement some of those new structures in our life. So very important, especially with a collective planet like Saturn. These events are going to have very widespread consequences for global consciousness. Mercury will also be going under the beams of the sun. So as Saturn emerges on the 11th, Mercury is going to go under the beams of the sun much later in the month, at the very end of the month. So we're going to get ready for a new Mercury cazimi heading into May. Okay. Mercury is going to be going through a condition called malefic enclosure in April. There is that set of dates that I was talking about, the 18th through the 22nd or so, especially on April 20th, Mercury is going to be enclosed in a bodily conjunction, a bodily enclosure between Mars and Saturn. So there could be one particular day that could be very difficult communication-wise. There could be a lot of messages coming to us that could be a little bit destabilizing, that could make us feel frozen, make us feel a little bit heightened, a little bit of that fight or flight response. So we'll talk about that. We'll try to prepare you for that. And then a couple other things. We've got some Pluto squares that are going to be happening this month. We've got both the Sun and Venus making a square with Pluto from Taurus to Aquarius. So we'll talk about what that might mean for the collective and what that means for our personal lives. And then finally, the other kind of big picture thing is we've got Uranus moving into Gemini for the next 6 or 7 years here. We had a brief taste of this last year, and then we had a retrograde cycle with Uranus moving back into Taurus. But now we're going to see Uranus moving into Gemini again. I did an entire broadcast on this if you'd like to see some of the big picture themes of Uranus and Gemini. But just to kind of review some of that. We'll talk about this more when we get to it in the dailies. But Uranus can show us places where we are trying to break down old structures, or that those old structures are breaking down almost unexpectedly. It's not completely unexpected if we're really paying attention to the larger term cycles. But I think that we can get some shocks. We can get some lightning bolts. Sometimes Uranus, if we follow with Liz Green's way of looking at stealing fire, like Prometheus from the gods, we can be trying to achieve something divine that may get away from us. In this case, in Gemini, we may be trying to create a technology that we might not be able to control eventually. We're already being manipulated by it with artificial intelligence, and Uranus is going to start supercharging that conversation. So Uranus and Gemini in particular. So we'll talk about that more today, but hubris is a feature of Uranus as well. And we need to really kind of start to think about how we might be able to work through the hubris of trying to attempt to be godlike when Uranus moves through a specific place in the zodiac. In this case, in Gemini, our communications are ripe for evaluation around that. Okay, so those are some of our big picture thoughts. We've got a number of really great comments coming in today. I'm just going to check back in here. Let's see. Rose is saying, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, is about forging forward alone to do what you love. Very Aries, right? And Jane Seymour, right? Yeah, she is a beautiful woman. So Jane Seymour, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, go check it out. It's one of Rose's favorites. Javier says, I already cried today. Early morning transits, eh? Yeah, I felt like crying this morning. I don't think I actually had a breakdown yet, but I was feeling a little overwhelmed the last couple of days, just emotionally, just a lot of emotions swirling around in the collective. Rose says, you missed my post of my North Node is in Aries, still trying to own it. Well, there you go. Javier says, what's your take on the order of planets going through? On the order of planets going through. I think you'll have to be more specific about that. That statement is a little confusing to me, but if you have more context, I can try to answer that question for you. Steven says, woke up early, light candles and sage just before the sun ingressed into Aries. Well, there you go. It sounds like a healthy ritual. Rose says that stellium could be very energizing too, in my opinion. It definitely could be. Just depends on what it's lighting up in your chart, but everything has positives and everything has negatives, and we'll try to examine both sides of that today. Okay, Rose says, new Saturn could help build a new foundation for all that Aries energy. It could very much so. Rose says, as much as I did not like my chart for decades, I'm feeling fortunate now that I had those lessons earlier. Good. It's good to look back and be able to analyze things and see where we might have been growing and where we have room for improvement moving forward. Mayor says, my moon is at 19 degrees Aries and in my 5th house. My whole life feels like I'm on a mission to fight for my art and freedom to express. My moon loves physical exercise daily to process intense energy. I'll tell you what, Mayor, I need to get back into doing some more exercise. I think that would help my emotional state a little bit. But yeah, exercise is a great way to start shifting tides, shifting energy. And yes, the energy around protecting our art, those, I'm sure you're feeling this, Mayor, with the rise of data scraping, of artificial intelligence, of the internet without our permission, the stealing of our creative work to be able to create generative AI is something that's very concerning. There's something about it that makes us feel, at least myself, feel a little bit reluctant or hesitant to put my work out there and to do things of that nature. So I hope that you're still able to kind of do what you do and that your work is protected and that that we're in this together, right? We should fight for our freedom to express our art. We should keep making art. We shouldn't be intimidated by big tech and the stealing of our data without permission, or the stealing of our art to train an AI model. And we certainly, most 100%, should not assist them in doing that. So that is the argument for not using some of these chatbots and generative AI image generators, because you're literally training the technology that will steal from you and replace you, or attempt to. Now, we can have a big philosophical argument on whether AI can really replace us or not. Hopefully not. But that might be a longer discussion, and one that might get me too fired up to make it through the next 2 to 2.5 hours that we need to get through the Astrology of April. Okay. Got a lot of great comments coming in. I just can't get through all of them today, friends. I love hearing about the Aries placements. Let's see. Yeah, Pluto photos have been stolen online for decades. Why do you think we have had to plaster our copyright all over images? Yeah, a deep discussion could be had about copyright, about culture, about the commons. I have real mixed feelings about it. I don't know if I have time today to go into all of those things. I would recommend a movie, if I can remember the name of it, called Remix, a Manifesto. And this was about copyright this was in the mid 2000s that this came out. And it's about music copyright, but there's a lot of really interesting questions that come up. And I wonder, Remix, a Manifesto is what it's called. And it's a really great documentary about these questions. And I have real mixed feelings. I've used Creative Commons licensing on a lot of the work that I have done in the past, but I also think that there's a difference between Creative Commons and attribution, giving credit while you allow people to build off of your work, and the stealing of your work without credit or attribution or permission by a generative model that allows people to make an image of you, to steal your essence, really. It's sort of like the Dark Crystal at this point. They're basically training models to predict how you might speak. If the AI decided it wanted to, it could go into Spencer Michaud Astrology on YouTube. It could scrape all that data and probably create a whole astrology forecast that sounded exactly like me. At this point, you might not even know if I'm a real person at this point. I could be an AI bot right now. I'm not, but we're getting to the point where that is not science fiction anymore. Do you see what I'm saying? I saw a thing about they are using images of Val Kilmer to complete a role that he halfway did during the 2000s or late 90s, so that they could use his likeness. And those are the types of things that people in the SAG AFRA group have been fighting against, like people being able to protect their own likeness and things of that nature. So really deep conversations we could get into about it, and ones that are worth having. Let's see. Rose says, I got caught Gmail stealing an image from a friend that is pro-tog, so I notified him and they took it down. Well, there you go. Okay. Here is our middle range picture today. We talked about the big picture. Here is the medium view. We'll talk about lunations. Lunations are basically new moons, full moons, quarter moons. We have other ways that we can contextualize the moon cycle, but these are the ones we focus on here. We have a full moon. We're starting the month off with a full moon at 12 degrees of Libra. This is going to be on April the 1st in the decan of Libra, associated with contracts, associated with finding common ground with someone else, seeing someone else's perspective. So all of this Aries energy is tested immediately at the beginning of the month, where we want to move forward with something. We want to strike out independently, but we may have to work with others. And we're going to have a square with Jupiter in Cancer at that full moon. So there might be a feeling of being pulled in a lot of different directions at the very beginning of the month in a cardinal way, where we might be wanting to initiate, but we do have to check in with others. We have to realize that our actions do affect other people and their actions affect us. On April the 10th, we have a last quarter moon at 20 degrees of Capricorn. So this is the waning moon squaring the Aries sun, where we may be working and trying to work through some bureaucratic processes. Now, in the United States, this is right around the time we're dealing with tax season. And tax season can be very confusing. It can be very frustrating. It can be really frustrating when you feel like your tax dollars are going to support things that you don't believe in. I know my beautiful daughter posted a little video about this on Instagram the other day, and I agree with her. Like, sending our tax dollars over to fund war and genocide and policies that we don't agree with, and to kidnap our neighbors and put them in concentration camps is not something that we feel really great about. So we may be having some tension around tax season this year, in particular with the last quarter moon, with the moon in its exile squaring the sun in its exaltation. We have a new moon at 27 degrees of Aries at the 17th of April. So this is a new start, an Aries start, where a lot of the things that the new starts we've been feeling coming, but this is really kind of a go button for us on the 17th, which is right around that time period where all of those planets are going to be coming together in that big Aries stellium as well. We have a first quarter moon on the 23rd of April at 3 degrees of Leo. That's going to be squaring the Taurus sun. So there might be some challenges around resources around that period of time and visibility. I know that this is a conversation I've been having a lot with people in my life and in our family, is the need to be visible, especially in digital spaces, but the discomfort around that, especially when we are becoming more and more entrenched in a surveillance state and with big tech scraping our data and like invading our privacy. There may be some tension around that, especially with the T-square with Pluto at that first quarter lunation. So we are feeling challenges around visibility, challenges around showing up, challenges around privacy, and that also could be having an effect on our resources, scarcity, some of those themes that we see within Taurus 1 that we'll talk about today. We have a number of ingresses of new planets into new signs in April. We have Mars moving into Aries on April the 9th. We have Mercury following into Aries on April the 14th. And then the sun will be moving into Taurus on the 19th. So this is that sun moving into Taurus is going to start setting off some of the squares with Pluto. It's going to be highlighting some of the challenges that we're going to be experiencing that day around the big Aries stellium, but it's also going to start moving us in a different direction than all the planets stacking up in Aries. On the 24th, Venus is going to be moving into Gemini. Okay, so making the splitting of attention more attractive on some level. And then the day after that, Uranus moves into Gemini on the 25th of April. Really a very big transit as far as the collective is concerned, where we may be innovating with communication, we may be innovating with technology, but we also have to be aware of the hubris of trying to be godlike with that technology or godlike with those communications, because we might be creating something that we think that we have control over, but has sort of takes on a life of its own that may be very difficult to put back into the jar or into the box once it's been let out. So those are our planetary ingresses. We have a number of solar phases in April as well. On April the 9th, Mercury exits its retrograde shadow at 22 degrees of Pisces. So this is when Mercury is going to start traversing new ground. Today, Mercury is stationing direct. As I'm recording this, Mercury is stationary. It's probably going to station direct while I'm recording this, while we are live together at about 3:30-ish Eastern time, half an hour or so. But this is when, on the 9th, when Mercury is going to exit the place that it retrograded back from. Okay, so this is a point where we might start to get some clarity around things in our life, especially related to Mercury and the Gemini and Virgo areas of our life that Mercury is trying to provide resources for. April 11th is a very big day. This is the day that Saturn is going to emerge as the morning star at 6 degrees of Aries. Again, we talked about that earlier in our big picture thoughts, but Saturn emerging as the morning star speaks towards the revelation of what has been brewing behind the scenes as far as new laws are concerned, new structures of society, new authority figures, new authoritarianism, like with a fallen Saturn in Aries. Saturn is not super happy in Aries. It is said to be in its fall. It's said to be debilitated in that sign for a number of reasons. Saturn is usually a planet of patience. Saturn is a planet of seeing the big picture, of seeing multiple perspectives and creating laws and structures based on the needs of everyone, not just the needs of an individual. When Saturn is in Aries, we have people that are being very impulsive. We have people that are acting in their own self-interest. And a lot of those things the seed for that is going to be planted on the 25th of March. And we're going to see the results of that emerging on around the 11th of April. So Saturn emerging as the morning star, very important. Pay close attention because there may be long-term ramifications and consequences for what is emerging around that period of time. Saturn enters its retrograde shadow at 7 degrees of Aries on April the 20th. That is a really supercharged day, April the 20th. Not only does Saturn enter its retrograde shadow, it also is the Mercury malefic enclosure. Okay, so we'll talk about that when we get to that in the broadcast, but pay attention to that 7 degrees Aries point because Saturn retrogrades back to that point. This big conjunction between Saturn, Mars, and Mercury are all around 7 to 8 degrees of Aries. All of that is squaring Donald Trump's Mercury in the 12th house in Cancer. That is also a point on Jeffrey Epstein's natal moon, 7 degrees of Aries. So these narratives are going to start becoming more and more connected. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that when we get to it, but there's some connections to be made there where that story is not complete either. On the 30th of April, Mercury goes under the beams of the sun at 25 degrees of Aries, so getting ready for its cazimi in May in Taurus. Okay, and that cazimi is going to happen in the late degrees of Taurus, fairly close to Algol. So we may be getting some information about what we might need to fix moving forward, because that decan of Taurus, Taurus 3, is about fixing things that have fallen into corruption. So the Mercury moving under the beams of the sun in Aries may show us some of the things that are going to need fixing moving forward into May. We also have a couple out of bounds moon periods. We have the moon moving out of bounds from April the 5th to April the 10th, and then again from April the 19th to the 23rd. That really poignant period that I was talking about between the 18th and the 22nd or so, moon's going to be out of bounds for most of it. So we might be feeling extra emotional, extra nostalgic, extra around that period of time. The malefic enclosure of Mercury is going to happen between 7 and 8 degrees of Aries on April the 20th. So 420 this year, we may need some extra help medicinally around this day based on the the events that we might be experiencing potentially. But I digress. So let's see. Rachel Fletcher says, love that Sean Astin is using his leadership of the Screen Actors Guild to advocate for real people actors and filmmakers. Yes, very important. He is leading the charge with that. Actually, I work with someone who works with him and talks about this issue quite a bit. And there has been a lot of movement in that particular field towards protecting people's intellectual property, protecting their identity, right? Protecting their privacy, protecting the use of their image. Think about how dangerous it could be for people to steal your image and create something that looks and speaks and has your mannerisms, and they can make whatever they want with it. It raises a lot of questions about a post-truth society. It is very, very dystopian and scary to me. So having people like Samwise Gamgee, aka Sean Astin, going to bat for everyone's rights, not just actors, everyone's rights to having their own likeness, their own persona, online, etc. It's really important. It's really important to pay attention to those battles, because it's not just in Hollywood. It is all of us that are susceptible to that kind of manipulation. So I think it's a really important conversation to have, and I'm glad that Sean is taking up that mantle. Rose says we should shorten photographer after decades to being a professional into pro photog. Okay, well, there you go. In my opinion, Dumpy is feeling trapped because the world is against him. He is losing in court a lot, so he might be like a wounded, cornered wild animal in this next month. So I'm working on bless and release him. Rose, I'm going to take a deep breath and a drink before I address that, because you're absolutely right. But we've been talking about this for quite a bit, right? Whenever the president is facing accountability, that's when he creates distractions. And unfortunately, because of how much power that he has, those distractions are very dangerous, not only for the American people, but for people in the Middle East, people globally, in global trade wars, etc. All of these things are very, very dangerous. When you have a corrupt individual who is facing consequences but has the power to distract from them through wielding power corruptly, it's very frightening. And I think that this was one of the things that I perked my astrologer's eyes, ears, spider sense, whatever you want to call it, seeing that giant Aries stellium squaring a very important point in his chart and also activating the person's chart that he's actively trying to distract from is, it's very concerning. So being aware of that, I think, is very important. Being aware that that is a very activated time period can, I think, help us as individuals practice extra self-care around that period of time, practice the types of creative things that help center us and ground us, help us to stay balanced, help us to stay in our integrity, right? All of those things are important. Astrology can help us with this. Doesn't mean we necessarily are going to be able to prevent whatever he may or may not do. It might be that we could, but sometimes these things are bigger than us, and we have to figure out how we're going to either respond, or how we're going to stay centered, or how we're going to act and try to heal whatever fallout that might be. Mayor says, knowing astrology and learning about my Aries placements helps me to develop mindful ways to redirect anger. This April looks intense. Use the energy creatively. It is intense, Mayor. This is a difficult month. I won't beat around the bush. You know that I try to be honest with you folks here today in the chat. I would feel that I would be shirking my responsibility as a guide to help prepare you for what is coming, to say that, yeah, April is just super chill. It's not. It is very intense. There's a lot of powerful energy that's going through April. And I don't try to be sensationalist on this channel either. I don't think it's helpful to fearmonger or to get you riled up for no reason. But I do think it is helpful to learn, like just what you're saying, Mayor, how to redirect it when we're experiencing that fear, anger, discontent, disillusionment. What do we do with it? How do we channel it in productive directions? How do we channel it towards change? If we're not happy with what we're seeing, how do we channel it towards change? I've had a lot of thoughts about that recently. I've been doing a lot of studying around that. I don't have any great answers yet. This is part of the reason I haven't made a declarative statement about it or launched an enterprise around it or whatever, because I don't have the answer yet. It's a complicated question, and sometimes it takes living into the answer and putting our heads together to do so. Okay. Rachel says, I'm really grateful for you making that prediction. The release of the files has not been at all trauma-informed, triggering many survivors. We could see more of that revelation. I will break down some of the connections with that, because there's not just connections with Jeffrey Epstein's moon around that period of time. He's the minute the sun moves into Taurus, it immediately squares Epstein's natal sun at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And I do believe very strongly that charts still remain activated after someone's death. So he's going to be in the news one way or the other, and Trump is going to be right in the crosshairs of that. So yeah, important to know what's coming. And those events do have consequences, because we have seen, like people have been pointing out in the chat, when a person in power is cornered and they have the power to use the power corruptly, we have to be kind of on our head on a swivel to see what that might bring. Rose says, this month for me, my mantra will be my photo mantra: focus, focus, focus. Let the beauty you love be what you do. I like that. Yeah, I think that we can do that as well. And let's see. Okay. I got to keep moving on. I can't keep moving on, folks. Great discussions. I love the wisdom that comes through the chat. I love the participation. I love the questions. I love all of your insights. Let's start out with Aries. What do you say? Okay. Before I do that, before I dive into what I like to do on this channel, if you're new, welcome. We're a little fired up today. We're going through a wide range of emotions as the sun is conjoining Neptune as we're recording this, as it's applying to Saturn. There's a lot going on in the collective. We're processing a lot of changes, processing the past, we're processing our present, and trying to figure out what is going to come to us in the future. And how we're going to break this down next is we're going to break it down through decans. So I like to kind of take these little time sections to show you what the sun may be casting a spotlight on. Now that the sun is in Aries as of today, it is going to be in its exaltation. Okay, so this is a really powerful moment for solar energy. Now, solar energy, I think, has a number of things that we can associate with it. I don't know if we necessarily think of it as good or bad. Planets are fairly neutral when it comes to this. It just means that the sun is very strong at this point, in my opinion. I think there is some energy around figuring out who we are, figuring out who we want to be, what we want to be visible. I think themes of visibility with the sun, the organ of perception, it is called in Valens, I believe. Vettius Valens, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the traditional astrologer Vettius Valens. It is also a place, in my opinion, as I'm trying to put my own kind of, I don't know, spin on it, I think it's a place of great generosity, of vitality, but it can also be very despotic. If we think about the sun, it can give life very generously without asking anything in return, but it can also create death. It can also burn us. It can also kill us. It can dehydrate us. Like it can be very dangerous. And a very strong sun can be scorching as well as healing and vitality producing. So ways to think about that. Sorry, I got something in my eye here. The Aries 2 sun, as of today, we are working through the sun in Aries 1, where if we look back here, we are talking about severing and separating from the collective to strike out on our own, the very Mars-ruled decan. right? Lord of Dominion, trying to figure out which new territory we want to conquer in the language of early 20th century, late 19th century colonial language that is infused throughout these tarot decans from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Now, we can change that story a little bit, but understanding that is important because we have seen a lot of language around manifest destiny, around colonialism, around just hostile takeover of territories. And if we try to whitewash the decans, we're going to miss some of the things that are actually happening in front of our face. So I do think it is useful to understand that this is part of what might be coming through the collective here. When we get into Aries 2, we move from the severing and separating that comes through Aries 1, and we move towards declarative statements about what we believe. In the first decan, we say, this is what we're not. In this decan, we say, this is who we are. It is a solar decan. It is the decan that has the degree of exaltation of the sun at 18 and 19 degrees of Aries. Book of Thoth calls it the Lord of Virtue. Austin Coppock calls it the crown. Okay, so some questions you could ask yourself during the period between March the 30th and April the 9th is, what do you truly believe in? What are you trying to put out into the world, right? How do you announce or clarify your values? What do you value? Okay, how do you establish your character? How are you going to serve the new territory that you are establishing with dignity? Can you establish independence and self-governance in this area of your life? Where do you make your own rules? This decan talks a lot about creating a world of your own, right? So where can you make your own rules, and where do you have to follow someone else's? What skill set does healthy leadership require? This is important. This is how we turn some of the toxic masculinity traits on its head. How do we become young leaders when we're dealing with Aries energy, but do it in a way that's in service of the people rather than trying to control or dominate them, right? How do you take responsibility for the power that you are trying to enact? Very important, okay? So as we go through Aries 2, okay, we are going to start seeing, we're going to start off with a banger, right? We're going to start off with a banger here. We're going to start off with a full moon. All right, so let me share my screen and I'll show you what we're dealing with here. One moment. Okay, so we've got our Aries full moon in Libra beginning on April 1st. Oops, that's not what it is. We don't want any eclipse. One second. Mercury is messing with me a little bit. There we go. Okay, so here is the full moon in April, very beginning of the month. Okay, so 12 degrees Libra, 12 degrees Aries in opposition, making a big T-square with Jupiter. Now Saturn is co-present with the sun, as is Neptune and Chiron. This decan is really, we're trying to make a declarative statement about what we believe in, what our personal values are. The moon isn't, that's where the sun is in, right? We just talked about that. The moon is in the decan that is all about making adjustments, about binding contracts. It's a Saturn decan. We've got a solar decan and a Saturn decan facing off with one another. It says, what are your commitments? What are you bound to? Where can you not make the rules? Where are you actually beholden to someone else's desires, needs, wants, etc.? And when we have it squaring off with Jupiter, Jupiter is kind of like an intermediary, right? Intermediary between these two. It is the attempt to create a safe space, an attempt to create some kind of nurturing environment for healthy growth. And it's in the overcoming square to the moon. So some of the tension that we might feel from the face-off between the Libra moon and the Aries sun maybe could be mitigated a little bit by Jupiter in Cancer. Now, the moon itself is going to be hosted by Taurus Venus, right? Venus in its own sign. A lot of the issues that are coming through this opposition are probably going to be around resources, because Venus in the first decan of Taurus is trying to make plans for planting the garden or plowing all the rocks out of it or removing the rocks so that we can plant the garden and plant the seeds in the garden. So there could be some challenges around that, but those are some of the themes that I think are going to be coming to the fore. The sun is hosted by Mars and Pisces still, so we still might be very idealistic about what we want to achieve. We may be thinking about the sacrifices that we want to make personally for our own dreams, for our own goals, etc., and then trying to balance them out with other people's needs, desires, etc. So we start off with not really a huge Aries focal point. We start off with the need to make compromises in Aries season. So something to keep in mind as we begin the month, needing to compromise. Now, the other challenge with this full moon is it's very close to a fixed star called Algorab. Algorab is in the constellation Corvus the Crow. Corvus was a bird, obviously, that was given the task or responsibility to fill the cup of Apollo, called Crater, the constellation Crater, right? And both of those constellations, the Corvus and Crater the Cup, are sort of riding on the back of Hydra, the sea serpent. And Corvus, the story goes, gets distracted by earthly delights, by shiny objects. And he fails his sacred mission from Apollo to fill the cup. And by doing so, he shirks his responsibility. He had a vow that he made to Apollo, Libra 2, vows, but he failed to follow through on those. And instead of taking responsibility, he blamed Hydra, the sea serpent. He tried to distract from his failing. Now, interesting, right? Because we've talked a lot about distracting, that is happening from government officials when they're facing accountability, when they're facing responsibility, okay? So this is also a full moon that teaches us how to stay focused. There may be some things that are trying to distract us from our goals around this period of time, especially at this full moon. And what we need to do is we need to stay focused. We need to commit to our responsibilities. We need to take responsibility if we've had any falling short of the glory. And we need to try to see our own needs and balance them out with the needs of others. Okay, this is part of being an adult. This is compromise is part of being a mature, functional member of society, rather than being an immature person who is just going off and trying to do whatever they want, consequences to other people be damned. And we're seeing way too much of the latter recently, of people saying, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I don't care who it hurts or what the residual damage is, the collateral damage is. And that is irresponsible and immature. So this is a full moon to get back in touch with the Saturnine, the exalted Saturn and Libra types of energies of being responsible for what we've committed to, avoiding distractions or avoid creating distractions, and trying to carry out our vision in the context of sharing this world with others. Not an easy thing to do. Could create some tension. You may have to give up some things that you were attached to. You may have to sacrifice some parts of your vision without sacrificing the entire vision completely. That's just part of being a functional member of a society. Okay. Yes, stay focused, Rose says. Definitely. That's what we're doing right now. We're doing. Attempting to do so. Mercury trines Jupiter and squares Venus squares Pluto on the 3rd, right? So here is the next day. I'm going to make it around noon or so that we have the stuff at the top of the chart so you can see it, okay? So Mercury on the 3rd is going to be trining Jupiter at about 15 degrees of Pisces in Cancer. So we may have some really good ideas about how to take the leap, right? Take the leap into the unknown to be able to figure out how to be satisfied with the work that we're doing without being a perfectionist about it. We could ask some questions about our skill set, whether we are prepared to do the things that we are attempting to do. Remember, the second decan of Pisces talks a lot about, really, it talks about sorcerer's apprentice energy, about trying to bridge the idealized with the reality, and also about figuring out if we have enough skills or enough experience to carry out the vision that we are planning to carry out. Now, making the trine with Jupiter in Cancer is interesting because that decan of Cancer is all about protecting something so that it can grow to its full fruition. So I think that this is a really good aspect with Mercury trining Jupiter to ask some questions about where do you still need to grow? Where do you need to maybe develop a little bit behind the scenes before you try to drive the chariot of the sun across the sky like Phaethon did unsuccessfully in the myth that we talk about surrounding that? Check out the decans of Pisces if you want to hear more. But this is also in the backdrop of Venus making a square to Pluto. This is one of our first major squares with Pluto for the month. And this is an aspect that I think there's a couple things that I think about with this. First of all, we haven't talked about Taurus 1 yet, but just to give you a preview of Taurus 1, Taurus 1 is the 5 of Pentacles decan, where we see two figures that have fallen a little bit on hard times outside of a church in a snorstorm, in a snorple. Sorry, this is what happens. This is Mercury stationing direct. You're going to try to say snowstorm, but it's going to come out snorple. So we're getting a little giddy today with Mercury. So you can see two figures in a snorple, and they're going to be seeking refuge either by coming from the church or going into the church. This is a decan that often has been characterized by worrying about scarcity, by worrying about not having enough physical resources. And Venus is going to be trying to smooth that over a little bit, okay? Now, Venus is coming into contact to a square with Pluto in Aquarius. So a lot of the things that we may be fearing around abundance, around having enough, they're like fundamental things like food, shelter, money, etc. Things that we need for everyday life, like fundamental things. When you see Venus squaring with Pluto, excuse me, there are bigger picture things that are being brought to the surface. There is corruption that's being exposed that makes people feel a little bit unstable when it comes to their financial or material security. Part of those things happen when you have a government like the United States dropping bombs on oil supply fields for most of the world. So the type of energy security that people have enjoyed for many decades starts to disappear when that happens. So there could be rising prices. You know, war is expensive. War is stupid and expensive. And this one, it wasn't very well thought out. I don't know if any of them are super well thought out, but this one in particular is a bunch of fucking bullshit. And I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of this whole thing. Like, I guess that's where I'm at today as the Aries sun is moving around. But when Venus is squaring Pluto, be careful about that. Be careful about fear of not having enough. One thing that I will say about the first decan of Taurus is that when you feel that scarcity kind of energy coming through, the real gift of this decan, it's a Mercury decan, Mercury face, is learning how to plan to be able to plant the seeds for abundance. So if you're feeling like, hey, wow, the bigger picture is getting a little scary. Things are getting expensive. What kind of things can you do to plan to mitigate some of those things? Maybe it's taking a look at your budget. Maybe it's cutting back on certain things so you can afford other things. Maybe it's planting a garden. Maybe it's growing some of your own food so that you're not so dependent on the system that is crumbling around us, quite frankly. There are things that you can do to extricate yourself from some of that corruption. Not everything. We have to learn how to get along. The fantasy of going off and buying some land somewhere is and just living completely off the grid. Honestly, that's just fantasy. Like I tried that. I tried that back in 2016. And what I realized was that everything is connected. That the water I'm drinking can be polluted from a farm, you know, two houses up the road that was polluted in the 70s. Do you see what I'm saying? Like we had to back out of buying the farm and going off the grid because the water was polluted. And that was an eye opener for me. That was my 12th house escape from society dream, and it was very edifying, realizing we can't escape society, right? We can try to maybe not be part of exploitive systems, but when we see those systems, we need to start creating a better system, a better one that is in service of the things that we really truly believe in, and of servicing each other rather than having this very individualistic mindset. I'm going to really push back on the individualism of Aries in this broadcast today, because I think it is only one phase of a much longer story. A lot of people are like, I need to just do my own thing when it comes to Aries. Yes, Aries is not just about radical individualism. Aries is about initiating one stage of a process. So you can start things. I tell this thing over and over and over again. I get frustrated thinking about it. This is me banging my head against the microphone. The seed pushes through the soil so that it can start spreading its leaves and interacting with the other forms of life around it, starting to create relationship. Aries is one phase of relationship, the beginning of new relationships. If you think about it as the beginning of isolation, you will not survive. A plant does not survive without the relationship to the sun, the relationship to the soil, the relationship to the animals and insects around it. It is part of a larger ecosystem and cycle. And I don't know who needs to hear this today, because I feel like a lot of you get it, but I think there's some of you here still that are saying, I need to just go off on my own and screw everyone else. And I think that that is a mistake. And I think that that is what we need to figure out and be aware that is happening in the collective, especially in April. There's going to be a lot of voices around that. There's going to be a lot of we need to just completely sever our ties and our relationships and all of these things. And I'm telling you, it's a mistake. That's not the way nature works. That's not the way human beings have survived for millions of years on this planet. Okay, thousands of years, however many years they've been here. We have thrived because of communal efforts. We've thrived because of relationships with each other, with the land, and with the divine, really, and a relationship with the divine, rather than seeing it as an enemy, or seeing the earth as an enemy, or seeing each other as enemies. It's really important. It's a message that I hope that continues to get put forth here. Let's see. I'm just looking through the chat here. Rose says Venus in conjunct Pluto. Says what? Venus squared Pluto, Rose. But yes. My first astrology dance teacher taught me to start. My first astrology teachers told me to start dancing and shake my booty. A bun dance. Oh, there you go. Rose says I wanted to buy 60 acres many moons ago. I had a creek and a pond with a frog, 7 south-facing hill for the whole house. But alas, didn't work out. Yep, sometimes it doesn't. Bloom where you are planted. I love that. Yep. Oh, you have Venus conjunct Pluto. Okay, well, there you go. Mayor says, I'm part of a collective of over 20 artists. I was just given a leadership role. Been really busy lately, but still trying to honor my own artwork. The astrology you're explaining is so accurate for me. Good, good. Remember, Mayor, leadership, a good leader is always taking into consideration not only their own needs, their own self-care, but the needs of the people that they are serving. So how do you set an example for people by doing your own work, but also understand how you can lead them to be successful in doing the work that they need to do, and how can you facilitate those relationships? It's relationships, right? If we don't facilitate relationships, we end up cast out, and life becomes much harder. Life becomes much more difficult when we shirk our responsibility as a relational being. Okay. So that's Venus square Pluto. Intensity, right? Something bubbling up from underneath the surface. This could also be something related to the divine feminine with women's rights. Something like that could be coming up and needing to be reckoned with the collective as well, with Venus being a universal significator for sacred feminine. On the 5th, the sun is going to square Jupiter. Okay, so this is when we are kind of getting into the sun is very strong. Jupiter is very strong. They're both exalted, right? Sun's exalted, Jupiter's exalted. And but Aries and Cancer are different energies. They have different agendas. So the agenda of Aries is generally to state your own personal, individualized opinion, or to make a start, a yang initiative start, but in service of coming into a relationship. Cancer is the point in the year or in the cycle or the collective where we're trying to bring something to its full potential. So we have this initiating energy, this risk-taking energy with the sun in Aries, and this protective energy with Jupiter in Cancer. So we may want to take a risk, but we may want to also protect something. Now, one of the things that traditional astrology can help us with is understanding which planet is kind of in the driver's seat. In this case, the sun is in the overcoming square to Jupiter. The sun's desire to take a risk may overpower Jupiter's desire to protect what we are trying to do. And that could lead to some tension, but it may also cause us to just go for it, right? Could be just the go for it energy. And it might be a little bit uncomfortable if we're trying to protect something, but it might also be necessary if we're being overprotective of something, or if we're moving too slowly. I could see pros and cons with both of it. Generally, Sun-Jupiter squares teach us about economy. And I know that's not the word you would maybe expect, but think about when we try to do something too large. If we try to work above our complexity ceiling, as we've been talking about on the channel, this is a warning that the thing that you are working on may blow way too big, may get blown out of proportion. How do we keep things at the appropriate scale for success? That might be another question to ask while the sun is squaring Jupiter from Aries to Cancer. Economy of energies, yes. Rose says, I've been feeling like this is the start of a second coming of Jupiter and Scorpio energies, like me too. Yeah, that could be potential. Yeah, I think that there could be some things around that. I think especially with Saturn and Aries, there's a little bit of a connection with that, Rose, because Saturn isn't just creating new structures when it moves into a sign. I think it also brings reckonings. So I think that with Saturn and Aries, there's a reckoning for toxic masculinity that is coming. There is a reckoning for yang that is unconsidered, initiating something to the detriment of everyone. There's reckonings coming with that. And to me, that Saturn functions at its highest when it is restoring balance. Saturn is exalted in Libra. It increases that which is lacking and decreases that which is excessive, like it's one of its ruling goddesses, Nemesis. So Saturn is going to help us to restore balance to Aries, which it seems like a paradox, right? But maybe it's going to help us to make considered beginnings. Maybe it's going to help us slow down our impulsiveness. Maybe it's going to help us consider the sacred feminine and not just yang that is destructive. I think that there's potentials for that as well. Nero is here. What's up, Nero? Says, can you tell me about my zodiac sign, Aquarius? I could. If you reach out for a reading, friend, I could spend a couple hours with you. But just very briefly, Aquarius, in the traditional sense, is ruled by Saturn. And it is a sign that is associated with kind of seeing the interconnectedness of the objective reality. It is often associated with featuring one particular viewpoint at the exclusion of other viewpoints. There is also something associated with Aquarius around feeling exiled or othered or cast into exile on the outside of the castle wall. But there's also some freedom that comes with that perspective, with not necessarily being beholden to the centralized power. There is, if they talk about a little bit of a rebelliousness around it, I think that there is that, but there is also, sometimes there is conformity that comes in Aquarius to an ideal, not necessarily to a person or to a system, but just to an idea. So that's a little bit of a small preview, but if you want a deeper dive into your chart, Nero, feel free to reach out for a reading, friend. But I appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us in the chat. On the 9th, Mercury exits its retrograde shadow. Okay, so we have that Sun-Jupiter square on the 5th, and we're seeing it kind of play out over the next few days. And when Mercury exits its shadow, we talked about that a little bit at the beginning of the broadcast, but this is Mercury sort of traversing new ground. It's going to be moving through the last 10-degree section of Pisces, probably a lot of thoughts and feelings and ideas around extremes of emotion, around what sacrifices we may have to make to achieve our dreams, to achieve the 10 of Cups kind of pot of gold at the end of the rainbow type of experience, to be able to bring our dreams into reality. Rose says, thanks for making me laugh, Spence. My mom and I have conjunct Aquarius moons. There you go. All right, friend. So Mercury exiting the retrograde shadow, important for starting to get some clarity, I think, around not only that area of the zodiac in Pisces, but also around Gemini and Virgo topics within your life. That brings us to the sun moving through Aries 3. Before I dive into that, let's take a stretch break. Okay, let's take a stretch. Let's kind of reset. We've still got some ground to cover here. Thank you all for being here today. Do me a huge favor. Like the video if you're here. Subscribe if you're new. Reach out for a reading if you are wanting some clarity around your natal chart. I also do tutoring sessions. If you'd like to learn more about traditional astrology and how to read a chart, I love working with people in that capacity as well. Stretch your hips out, stretch your legs. Oh, I gotta get my hips, my back. I just made some adjustments recently to the pillow I've been sleeping on because I was having some terrible neck pain recently after trying out a new pillow that was way, way too thick. But it does have these adjustable inserts. And I took one of the inserts out and my neck feels a lot better, but still making the adjustments. Do me a huge favor too. Go support Tanya Andrews over at Third Coast Mojo on Etsy if you'd like to get some things to help you mitigate the astrology that you're experiencing. And also check out the guided group study, The Silmarillion, that starts on March the 30th, Monday, March the 30th. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the Tolkien masterwork, The Silmarillion, coming up. I'm excited about that, and I would love to have some more people join us. I know Rachel's probably going to be joining us. My good friend Carl is a wonderful Tolkien enthusiast, and I hope we have a couple more. Hope we have some more folks. So again, just reach out. If you're interested in it, we can figure something out. I'm not as concerned with if you can afford to pay the suggested tuition, by all means, I would love your support. If you can't, I would be more than willing to work something out. I just would love to go on this journey with some more people. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. All right, friends, let's talk about Aries 3. We're going to get into the second decan of our month. Right? We usually have about 3 decans in a month. And with Aries 3, I'm going to bring up the decan flashcard again here. We have a 4 of Wands. Now, the 4 of Wands is a Venus-ruled face or decan in a Mars-ruled sign. So what we have is a weird kind of paradox between Mars, the fighter, the severer, the separator, and Venus, the harmonizer, the peacemaker, the charismatic Venus. So this decan really shows us, how do we utilize our charisma, our humor, our ability to draw people in, but not necessarily for the balanced win-win situation. This is more about a Venus that's trying to say, how do we get you to come over to my viewpoint, right? How do I convince you that my way is right or better or more attractive? Okay, there's like a sex appeal to this decan. There's a motivational speaker energy. There's the coach at halftime trying to motivate the team to come back from being down at the big game. There is the general trying to get the troops ready to go to war or something like that. Like it is really like a charismatic trying to convince someone of a particular viewpoint. It is also a place of sort of rest for the longer journey ahead. I love to compare this particular card to Rivendell in the Lord of the Rings, like a place where it's a temporary resting place. It's not a permanent place to reside, but there are some celebrations of where we've come to, and we're resting and we're gathering resources and supporters for the journey ahead. Austin Coppock calls it the burning rose. Sometimes there are passions that flare up in this decan as well, but they're not permanent ones, right? There's a temporariness to this decan. So there may be some things where we are trying to get people on board with our vision around this area of time between the 9th and the 19th. Important because that is sort of the beginning. It goes to the beginning of that really big Aries stellium we're going to talk about. So let's break this down with the chart. We'll bring the chart back to the stage. Okay. So here we have on the 9th, April the 9th, Mars moving into Aries. Okay, so this is happening, this says the 10th on the screen, but it technically switches over on the 9th. Now, if you notice, things are getting a little crowded in the domicile of Aries, the land, the temple, the space of Aries. So far, we have Saturn, Neptune, the Sun, Mars now, Chiron, and soon to be Mercury moving into that space. And then towards the end of the month, the moon. Okay. A lot of energy. And this is really an inflection point as well, because we have a co-presence with these other planets with their host. So imagine the general, the warrior, has been hosting people at his like camp or whatever you want. It feels like Aries is like a camp. It's probably not a palace or anything. It's just like a couple tents in the woods or something. And the general or the warrior is finally coming home, and he's got all these other people hanging out at his camp. And he finally is like, all right, here's what we have to do. Here is, where the enemy is. Here's where the battle lines are being drawn. And there is at least a sense of clarity around where we might be going, because now the host of that area can see these other planets and communicate with them. Whereas when Mars was in Pisces, there was this disconnect between those planets and their host Mars. So this might be the time where we're just like taking action, where the rubber starts to meet the road. It also can lead to a little bit of an explosiveness, like we have explosive tempers potentially. We might have more conflict in the collective than we already have, Mars will start to apply to Neptune as well. So there could be confusion around which direction to move, even though we are feeling just almost like our skin's going to burn off if we don't do something, like we want to bust out of our skin type of thing, like the seed that is busting out of the husk. Sometimes when you get so, when you're growing, you might feel like, oh, this container just doesn't work for me anymore. I just have to release these shackles. But there could be a little confusion around that with the application to Neptune. Now, that also is going to be around the time where we have a last quarter moon. So we talked about that in the very beginning. But here is the last quarter moon at about 20 degrees of Capricorn. This is also the week that's leading up to the tax deadline in the United States. So many people who are going through that, if you've saved it till the end, there's some pressure and you might be dealing with bureaucracies and things like that. The moon in this decan, as a waning moon, we may have to figure out how to navigate some of those bureaucratic processes. We may have to state our case to somebody. Like if we're going through something, we may have to say, hey, you have to use the energy of the sun in the third decan of Aries. You're trying to convince someone through charisma, not through bludgeoning your way through. If you've ever dealt with a government bureaucratic process, you probably have realized at this point that wielding the axe of discontent is not necessarily the way to get what you want. And I mean that and I know this from experience. Like if you go into the DMV, for example, and there's a line out the door, you're probably not going to get through it any faster by pushing your way to the front, knocking everyone over, and then telling the first person that is trying to serve people there, you better do my driver's license now, or I'm gonna, do something violent. That's a great way to get arrested. That's a great way not to get what you want. Okay. That's a great way to get the opposite of what you want. Okay. So you may have to use charisma. You may have to use your humor. Maybe there's a situation where you're using your complementary instincts to kind of grease the wheels. Every time I'm on the phone with a service provider, I resist the instincts that sometimes bubble up to be pissed off at them. Because first of all, they are just a cog in a greater machine 9 times out of 10. They have some power, but not unlimited power. And they're just as burnt out as you are with the process 9 times out of 10. A little bit of kindness in that, a little bit of humor can go a long way to someone actually helping you rather than getting burnt out themselves and saying, click, dial tone. You know what I mean? Because at any point, a lot of people in like a bureaucratic system, service provider, etc., they can make your life real difficult if they feel like it. Okay. And sometimes just being kind to someone, especially around this period of time, can really help you, right? So I would encourage you to not use your bludgeoning hammer or axe, and use a little bit of sweetness around this period of time if you're trying to navigate something like that. Now, this is also kind of happening right in one of our focal points for the month, where Saturn is emerging from under the beams. Okay, so you may have to use some of your charisma to navigate some of the challenges that come with Saturn emerging from 15 degrees of separation from the sun. We talked about this earlier in the broadcast, so I won't go too far into it, but when Saturn emerges, it becomes visible in the morning as the morning star. When a planet rises, you could see it. If we did a little demonstration here, you could see the planet rising in the eastern horizon. If I was to click the chart over, you'd see these planets going clockwise and rising in the east. Okay, here's the east. And you would see Saturn would be rising before the sun. Okay, Saturn would come over the east first. That is called the morning star, because you can see Saturn in the early hours of the morning before the sun rises. Okay, The evening star would be a planet that you can see when the sun sets and the star starts to appear in the evening hours. Now, this is important for Saturn because when a planet has a different kind of phasis, right, has a different type of morning or evening star condition, it can work more or less harmoniously. Now, Saturn enjoys being a morning star because it is part of the solar sect. Okay, it is part of the sect that is related to the sun. It's on a team of planets related to the sun. It also is heated up by being the morning star. Saturn is traditionally cold and dry or cold and wet elementally. So heating it up can help to balance out some of those slow, cold, depressing tendencies. Now, I will say this, heating up Saturn in Aries, though, might just make for more authoritarian type of draconian laws. It might bring things of that nature. I hope not, but I'm thinking about like adding more fire, more fuel to an already like volatile Saturn could be part of that. But I do think that I want you to connect the days when Saturn went under the beams. Okay, I'll give you the date for that. Saturn went under the beams on March the 7th at 2 degrees of Aries. That's when we had the breakdown of the old Saturn cycle. We have the Cazimi coming up next Wednesday on March the 25th as I'm recording this. And then it's going to emerge from under the beams on the 11th of April. So those are part of the synodic cycle of Saturn. Okay. So new laws, new revelations, new ways of envisioning authority, new responsibilities may be coming for us personally around this period of time. It is the revelation of what has been brewing behind the scenes. Let's see. When we move to the 13th, we have our Mars-Neptune conjunction. So here is Mars and Neptune coming together. And Venus is also making a sextile with Jupiter. So we'll kind of talk about these simultaneously because they're happening on the same day. Okay. Mars-Neptune coming together in the first degrees of Aries, right at the point that Saturn went under the beams. So you could also make the argument and the connection to March 7th, all right, and see what kind of things were you struggling with around that period of time. And now Mars and Neptune are coming together, leading to an action that may or may not be based on reality. Okay, so be careful about the actions that you take to solve the problems that came up in early March, because they could be colored a little bit differently. I would also say just practically, Neptune also often represents oceanic experiences. So Mars and Neptune coming together has often really spoken towards like conflicts in water or ocean battles, something like that. So there could be something like that we see in the collective as well. We've been seeing a lot of that as Mars has been moving through Pisces, which is another kind of indicator of conflict on water. But Mars and Neptune coming together, just the illusion that might makes right is another part of that, right? That if we just are the aggressor, we'll get this over quickly or something like that. I think that's part of what we're seeing right now is the people in power think that they are going to get in and get out with another war in the Middle East, and how stupid that is, just in general. But like this one in particular is really frustrating that it's not more well thought out, the ramifications and the repercussions of it. All war, in my opinion, is ridiculous and not really that well thought out, but some are even stupider than others. All right. So the Venus-Jupiter sextile You've got Venus moving through the second decan of Taurus, which is really related to finding a routine, to being able to say, how do I balance out work and play? How do I balance out giving and receiving? And when it's sextiling Jupiter, I think that there could be some positive things that come through this day on the 13th, where we are seeing the ability to give generously and take action on things that we want to begin, but maybe beginning a cycle of generosity could be part of that as well. So we move forward to the 14th, and we have the Mercury-Uranus sextile. And there's sort of a pattern that happens this month where a planet is going to sextile Uranus and then ingress into Aries. So we saw that with Mars not that long ago and the Sun, and now we're having the Mercury moving through and sextiling Uranus and then moving into Aries. So we might get some interesting ideas around the sacrifices that we have to make and what things we might need to repair with Uranus in the third decan of Taurus. And then Mercury moves into Aries a few hours after, and we see here's things getting spicy in our communications. Now, there are some benefits to this. I would say that Mercury in Pisces is doubly debilitated. It is both in its exile and its fall in traditional dignity. When it moves into Aries, it is going to have some clear advantages. It won't be in that double debility. It will be co-present with its host, Mars. It also isn't retrograde anymore. And I think that we move from a host, Jupiter, which is a strange bedfellow for Mercury. Jupiter is trying to bring things together in harmony. It's trying to bring order and peace in a lot of circumstances. Mercury likes to destabilize things through casting doubt, okay? When Mercury moves into Aries, there's not much doubt left. There's just like, how do I move forward? I don't need to cry about this anymore. I need to just take action. And that's leading to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 planetary bodies. It's soon to be 7 with the moon. A huge stellium is building up in Aries. So this is going to be a huge focal point for us moving forward. Be careful about your communications around this period of time. There could be a lot less nuance in the way that you communicate with people, and that could cause collateral damage for you moving forward. Sometimes when we say things in a way that is uber blunt, that can lead to arguments that we didn't necessarily mean to have, and that could be a little bit challenging moving forward. So measure your words when Mercury moves into Aries, because there's going to be a lot of volatile energy where we're going to be maybe even hyper-focused on our own needs and desires, and it might be more difficult to see something from someone else's perspective. All right. On the 16th, we have Mars sextiling Pluto. Okay. So here's Mars and Pluto making a contact with one another, and Mercury is going to conjunct Neptune. So here's the Mercury-Neptune conjunction in Aries. This is another potentially volatile type of aspect, with Mars making maybe positive contact with maybe helping to eliminate some corruption with the collective, or in regards to showing us how people have been othered. I think this is maybe a point where people are maybe even starting to fight back against the corruption, against people who have been detained or deported or things of that nature. Like a lot of the Pluto and Aquarius 1, a lot of those themes are around people that have been cast into exile or that are in a foreign land or a foreign space. And maybe with Mars sextiling Pluto here, there is maybe some breakthroughs with that potentially. I've been reading some really awful things about the concentration camps and detention centers that they're building that have me very concerned. about the future of all that it's already concerning and horrible, but really start paying attention to if those places start getting proposed in your area. There's one that's proposed in Romulus, Michigan, which is not that far away from where I live, and I'm feeling really, really upset and nervous about that coming to our community. The Mercury conjunction with Neptune, make sure that your communications are clear around this period of time. It could be very easy to misconstrue somebody's maybe overly blunt or aggressive way of speaking as conflict. And it may be that they're just caught up in their own, machinations. And I think that it's important to get clarity when you're communicating with someone around the 16th, because this is really leading to a kickoff of that very intense period of time that starts with this new moon in Aries. Okay, so here is a really intense period of time that we're kicking off on the 17th with the new moon in Aries. You've got a huge stellium here with Neptune, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, Chiron, the moon, and sun. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 planetary bodies hanging out in the same area. It's hosted by Mars here. We do have, what else is going on in this? It is all squared Jupiter by whole sign, not necessarily by aspect, but by whole sign. So all of it's in the overcoming square to Jupiter. I really think the tension with this new moon is going to be the need to start something. There is a lot of time pressure that comes around Aries season. If you're a gardener, you understand that there are certain windows to plant seeds, to prepare your garden. And if you miss that window, you're going to be really behind the 8 ball. Sometimes there's going to be a lot of challenging, you might be having difficulty with your abundance if you don't plant at the right time. And that could be true metaphorically too. If you don't plant the seed for a project that you're working on or take action on it, you might miss your window of opportunity. So make sure that if there's something that you need to start, that you don't get too protective of it, and that you move forward with grace around that if you can. This is bringing us to the hot spot that I was talking about. Okay. Yeah, Esther's here. What's up, Esther Dudley? Nice to see you. Says this new moon is a lot. It does look like a lot, because it is going to kick off a really intense weekend and into the next week. Okay. Rose. Yep, I could see you, Rose. Testing if you could see it. We could see you, bud. All right. So this new moon is going to start unfolding with some of the most intense astrology of the first half of 2026. And it starts off with this Mars-Saturn conjunction. Okay, so here is April the 19th. You could see Mars and Saturn coming together at 7 degrees of Aries. Remember that degree, 7 degrees of Aries. Okay. This is happening before the sun moves into Taurus. This day, the 19th into the 20th, is really active. We're going to have the Mars-Saturn conjunction happening the 19th. The sun is going to move into Taurus. And then we have the Mercury-Saturn conjunction on the 20th that begins the malefic enclosure of Mercury. I want you to keep your eyes focused on that degree, though. 7 degrees of Aries. Okay? Because there's a number of things that are happening at 7 degrees of Aries. We hinted at it at the beginning of the broadcast today, but some things that are important. First of all, we have an Aries stellium, a giant Mercury, Neptune, Mars, Saturn stellium, squaring Donald Trump's natal Mercury at 8 degrees of Cancer in his 12th house from his 9th house. So potentially conflict from a foreign place that is activating maybe some of his worst instincts. Okay, this is part of the challenge. Or that is leading to a downfall or a self-undoing of some sort. It is also activating Jeffrey Epstein's natal moon at 7 degrees of Aries. And the other contact that we have with that is the sun moving into 0 degrees of Taurus is squaring Jeffrey Epstein's natal sun at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So the combination of these things tells me, hey, those two individuals are going to be in the collective's awareness during this period of time. And we know that that has traditionally, over the last few months, led to some pretty intense consequences for everyone around them that is in that sphere, while these folks try to avoid accountability for their actions in the past. So just keep your head on a swivel around this period of time. Mars coming together with Saturn, it's pretty volatile. It's something that is a pretty, I guess, negative aspect. I would say that generally Mars and Saturn conjunctions or squares, it sometimes can feel like a gas and brakes type of energy, with Mars being the gas and Saturn being the brakes. But with both of them in Aries, I'm not sure there are any brakes anymore in this particular decan. I just think that it might be taking action on, man, I don't even like speaking stuff like this into existence, but making more, I don't know. There are a couple ways I could see it playing out. Taking action on more authoritarian measures, creating more self-serving laws, environments, etc. Just an activation of violence. All of those things are possible. Accountability for Trump, I don't know. I just never like predicting that anymore, because he just seems to escape any accountability, like because of this benefic enclosure of his Saturn in his chart by Jupiter and Venus. He seems to get away with what he says he could get away with. Like, he can murder someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. And he's done basically the equivalent of that many, many times, and it has escaped any kind of responsibility for it. So we'll see. I do think that even the most slippery of people do eventually have to face the music, whether it's in this lifetime or the next, but we'll see what happens. This is a very volatile coming together of energies. And that brings us to the Sun in Taurus 1. The other thing I will say before I move on from that particular degree, whatever happens on this 19th through the 20th stellium malefic enclosure of Mercury, this is going to be playing out until December. It is not going to just be like this is the beginning and the end all wrapped in one, because Saturn is going to station retrograde at 14 degrees of Aries on July the 26th. And it's going to retrograde all the way back to this degree, 7 degrees of Aries, on December 10th. And it stations direct on this degree. So pay attention to what happens here, because this is Saturn entering its retrograde shadow, the exact place it's going to retrograde back to. Okay. It is also going to kick off this malefic enclosure. Now, before we get to the malefic enclosure, let's talk about Taurus 1. And Rachel says there are no breaks anymore. Oh boy. Yeah, that's what it feels like, right? That's what it feels like. It's scary. It's scary. I'm on a little bit on a struggle bus today, friends. I'm feeling the energy of the Aries ingress. My normal like centeredness, and I think some of my patience is thin today, and it's not patience thin with you all. It's patience is thin with how things are going in the collective. My patience with our government, our patience with warmongers and corrupted corporate individuals, corrupted government officials, my patience with people destroying the earth and hurting other people out of their own self-interest. I'm out of fucks to give about that stuff, man. I just feel a little down about it, you know? And I'm struggling to find the words to describe a lot of it today. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed emotionally about it all. And I love being the center voice of reason for this community, but this month's going to be a toughie. And the experience we're going through right now it's not normal. And trying to act like things are normal and like that this is just another Mars transit or blah fucking jabbity. It doesn't feel like it actually is a reflective of what we're experiencing as a collective. Things kind of suck right now. We're in real danger right now. Like that is the reality. We're in danger as a country. We're in danger as a global community with our climate. It's a tough time, and we're going to have to figure out how to weather these storms by creating the resiliency and the networks of resiliency to get through it. Again, it's never my intention to fearmonger or to make you feel less stabilized. But sometimes we have to just call it out when we see it. And when you have stuff like this going on, it's very intense, astrology. And the life that we're living right now is very intense. Rose says, Dimpy will slide down on his own slippery shit. I would hope so, but that really hasn't been the case so far, Rose. He's gotten away with almost everything. Everything. And I hope that one day that it will catch up with him. But so far it hasn't. He's in control of it all right now. It sucks. Thank you, Esther. Appreciate you. Rachel says, agreed. Everything now is unprecedented. It's tough to find historical precedents for this stuff, isn't it? It really is. We're at a huge inflection point in our global narrative and story. Huge, huge. The world is changing completely underneath our feet. Lauren says, something to investigate with the erecting of concentration camps, and perhaps the astrocartographers can keep an eye on is the asteroid Anne Frank, and that is at 0 degrees of Aries right now. Yeah, Lauren, I didn't want to super go into this today, but Tanya brought this up to me. She was listening to a podcast that was saying that these concentration camps, and that's exactly what they are, is concentration camps. They're installing medical grade incinerators in these places, which is something that they don't even do in state-funded prisons. And medical grade incinerators are for getting rid of bodies. And that is very, very disturbing, extremely disturbing. So we're at a 5-alarm fire right now. If you are still like kind of going through your day like, hey, everything's fine and blah blah, no, we're at a place where we really need to start pushing back on this much stronger if we can, and figuring out ways to stop this, because it's not good. It's not good. Mare says, if I start spinning and getting angry, I don't deny my emotions, but I wanted to share when I go into nature, it helps a lot. Do self-care if you can. Yeah, I'm due for a big nature walk, Mare, for sure, 100%. Rose says, it's all playing out in the courts. He just lost again. I hope so. I hope so. I'm just not seeing the visible results of that yet, but there are definitely some pushbacks for sure. Pain Turtle Lauren says, there are some Saturnian natal placements that have been able to recover missing persons with astrology, and that beautiful soul Anne could probably help in some recovery measures. I hope so. I hope so. Rose says, I've been to Auschwitz. Let's check the astrocartography. Yeah. I don't even know what to say about all of that. Just be aware of what's going on in your community. And if you're seeing these warehouses being erected, look into it. Push back on it in your local city councils. Let's not be complicit in this type of behavior, this type of movement, this type of system that is so fundamentally corrupt and destructive. We got to stand up for ourselves and for our brothers and sisters that are most vulnerable. And that's people of color, that's immigrants, that's the LGBTQ plus community, that's anybody who doesn't fit their ideal, their homogenized ideal of what is acceptable. Political dissidents, it's scary time. But don't let that cow us into being quiet. I'm really struggling with this lately, as I don't necessarily like to be the rabble rouser, but sometimes we have to be. Maybe this is part of the Aries courage, is how do we push back on such visible corruption, that how do we just not be silent around these things? I think it's really important around this period of time. Rose says, we are winning on the building of big tech power AI places. For now, Rose, maybe. I don't know where you live, but in Michigan, they're trying to build one every 15 miles. There's about 4 of them within a 30-mile radius around me right now that are in the process of being built. So that's been really demoralizing for me lately, but we do definitely have to keep pushing back on that, because it's a really toxic technology, not only for the environment, but for our minds and our creative faculties and for our privacy. So yeah, I think that the more you can push back on it, the better. Rose says, you see all I read and scroll through on my blue sky. Yeah. So this is the beginning of a very difficult point in the month. Rose says, localities must push back. Yeah, keep showing up at those community meetings, friends. Keep making your voice heard around that, because these tech companies are trying to push this through without any community input. We've got one from the University of Michigan that is run by a military company, basically a military research company that is trying to get pushed into literally my backyard in Ypsilanti Township. They've already bought the land, they're trying to pull the permits. You're already seeing things in the community of Saline that's not too far away from me, where they're already clearing the farmland to build these things. Like, yes, we're winning some short-term battles, but it's not just a one and done. It's a continuing to raise our voices around these things and to push back on it, because the power of profit and the pursuit of it is very strong. And there's a lot of investment that's already been made that people are going to try to protect their investments, and there's going to have to be a loud pushback on it. And for the love of God, friends, stop using it. Stop using the chatbots. Stop using the generative AI. I know it's integrated with everything, but you can turn it off on your searches. You can turn it off. You can disinvest from it, because these are some of the things that are powering the surveillance state and corporate fascism, and stealing your work, your ideas, your images, your image, your persona online, all of these things. Push back on it. Never quit. Focus, 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 Rose says. Good trouble. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Taurus. Let's talk about Taurus. Yeah, let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that can be. Let's talk about Taurus. Let's talk about bulls. Okay. 4/19 through the 30th. So halfway through the day on the 19th, the sun moves into Taurus 1. Let's bring up some of the themes of Taurus. Let's look at, we've been talking about it a little bit along the way, but here you can see the image of the Deccan flashcard. Venus ruled sign. Sun is in a Venus ruled sign now. And now we have the sun hosted by Venus on Algol, the day that it moves into Taurus. So Venus Algol, the 19th. Taurus 1, Mercury ruled face in a Venus ruled sign. Book T calls it the Lord of material trouble. The Book of Thoth calls it the Lord of worry. In 36 Faces, Austin Coppock calls it the plow. Now, you see these themes here of people falling on hard times, worry about financial and material security, but that worry leading to making plans to plant seeds for abundance in the future. Okay. So don't let the impending scarcities paralyze you, I think, through Taurus 1. The sun's going to start making and applying to a square to Pluto. So this is the point where the revelation of power corruption starts to happen. This day, the 19th and the 20th, huge for revelation of corruption. Okay. But maybe also power cracking down too. So this series of aspects, I could see protests and clashes with protesters and government and things of that nature. I could see markets being really volatile around this period of time with like investments and the stock market and things like that. Um, just a lot of volatility around this period. And as I was saying before, when the sun moves into Taurus, it exactly squares Jeffrey Epstein's natal sun in Aquarius. And all of these planets are coming together on his natal moon. So let's look at the chart once again. Bring it back up. Let's see. Jupiter, Lauren says, Jupiter in Cancer at the exaltation degree says, use loss as a guide. Yeah, I think that there's fertility. There's fertility within this. I would rather have an exalted Jupiter trying to help mitigate some of the challenges of this giant Aries stellium than I would not having Jupiter there, right? I think that this there is potential for growth, but there's just a great amount of tension around it. I would also say too that one of the things that Jupiter could be pushing forward in Cancer is just a feeling of nationalism as well, like this is my kin and this is not, and you're in the inside and you're in the outside. So that could be blowing up out of proportion as well. So looking at it from that perspective could be another angle or lens. Rachel says, I'm going to take this as my new Taurus theme song. Let's talk about Taurus. Let's talk about Taurus. Right? A little salt and pepper for you, Rachel. Recent Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees, Salt and Pepper. Rose says, can I tell you I was a cheerleader, literally even in grade school, pom-poms and all. Okay. Focus on what you are wealthy with, Rose says. I love it. I love it. Oh, so let's talk about this Mercury in malefic enclosure. Here it is, April 20th. Quite a day. A malefic enclosure, if you are unfamiliar with that concept, is when a planet is either being aspected via a ray, an aspect ray, by both Saturn and Mars simultaneously, enclosed within them, or there is a bodily enclosure. That's what we have here, which I think could be even more intense of a besiegement or enclosure. So you could see Mercury moving through. So we have the conjunction of Mercury with Saturn, right, on the 19th to start it. In my time zone, Eastern time, it starts at 7:22 a.m. We have this happening all the way until the conjunction with Saturn, okay, which is the end of it at 5:44 p.m., okay, just as Saturn is entering its retrograde shadow. So we have about 3 to 8 hours, about 10 hours of Mercury in malefic enclosure at the exact degree that is squared Trump's Mercury. I think he's in for a real tough day that day, because Mercury is also the ruler of his natal sun. So keep your eyes peeled on him on this weekend into the beginning of this week. That day could be very tense. Watch your own communications that day. You may feel stuck between a rock and a hard place with Mercury, especially in the Gemini and Virgo area of your chart. Pay attention to what messages you receive around this period of time, because Saturn is going to retrograde back into these degrees all the way forward into December. So this is the beginning of an intense story, not the end of it. It is the beginning, not the end. Venus also conjoins Uranus a few days after this. Now, I would also point out that during this Mercury malefic enclosure, Venus is on Algol. And if you aren't familiar with Donald Trump's chart, he has Algol on his midheaven. So he's going to have Venus on Algol on his midheaven while this huge stellium is squaring his natal Mercury, while all of that stuff is lighting up Jeffrey Epstein's chart with a sun square and all of those Aries planets conjoining his natal moon. So buckle up. Let's see what happens. Let's try to live into the answers. Do all of your self-care. Go out in nature. Try not to schedule too many things around this period of time. I have a feeling there's going to be distractions. And the less we are committed to around these like 4 days or so, probably the better that we can be dealing with it, whatever comes to us that is unexpected within the collective. So Venus conjoins Uranus on the 23rd. And here is sort of a similar aspect that we were seeing with a sextile to Uranus, but now it's a conjunction before a planet changes signs. So something that's revealed to us that helps us to find an innovative way to fix something that is broken. Uranus in Taurus 3 often shows us how to repair something that has fallen into corruption. When Jupiter conjoined Uranus a few years ago in Taurus, here's an example of this. My partner brought me a New York Times article about fructan. And if you're not familiar with what fructan is, it's a sugar that some people have a lot of trouble digesting, that can create a lot of pain in your digestive tract, and it can look like a gluten sensitivity. And she was like, maybe you have a fructan sensitivity. I had a lot of trouble digesting certain foods, sometimes wheat, sometimes other foods that had this sugar in it, but mostly it was onions and garlic. And this revelation completely changed my day-to-day bodily experience. We found this enzyme that helped to break down those sugars, and now I can eat pretty much whatever. We cut most of the onions and garlic out of our diet just because that was a real trigger. But now there's an enzyme, if we want to put it in our food, it's called FODzyme if you're curious, that helps you digest that. And it completely eliminated my gastrointestinal issues. I tell you that story because it's an example of a long-term problem that just out of the blue was solved with a benefic planet conjoining Uranus. So this could be one of the points in the month where we have some really unexpected good fortune, where we have the ability to solve a material issue that's been vexing us for a long period of time. So after this really difficult period with Mars, Saturn, Mercury all coming together, with Venus on Algol, with all of that stuff squaring and lighting up some of the points of leadership that have corruption in their history, we might have a solution that comes unexpectedly out of the blue with Venus conjoining Uranus to maybe move through some of those challenges. Okay, so that's an interesting kind of little point of potential positivity within the month. As we get to the other element of this day, is we will have a square, a T-square between the moon and the sun and Pluto. So if you look at what we've got going on here on April the 23rd, which by the way is the start of the NFL draft if you celebrate football Christmas, as I do. I digress. I do really enjoy that process and the potential. I have some problems with professional sports and the challenges around that and the commodification of human beings and all of those things. But there is something special about seeing some of these young gentlemen's dreams coming true in real time. There's something beautiful about that. I try to see both sides of that. But anyway, this is a first quarter moon where we are still dealing with the challenges of the sun in Taurus, one, where we're highlighting and shining a spotlight on where we potentially might be feeling a lack of security and needing to plan to mitigate that. We have the Leo moon, in a decan that's associated with vying for visibility. Okay, the Five of Wands card, if you're familiar with that, like a feeling of competitive situation that requires us to be visible and to utilize spotlight energy. And then we have Pluto in the decan that might create some fear around visibility, some fear around being different. So if you think about this T-square in this first quarter moon, we're trying to initiate a new charismatic way of being, to convince people to come over to our side of thinking with the new moon in Aries 3. Here we have the first quarter moon, the tension point of bringing that goal into existence. So we have tension between our financial security, our potentially needing to be more visible, but our fear of being visible all at the same time. I'll tell you what, I'm feeling this acutely right now, acutely. My partner is too. We're being thrust into a situation with job challenges and transitions where we need to get more, I don't know, we need to please the algorithmic gods a little bit more, I think, and be a little bit more visible and figure out new ways of bringing in new clients, students, customers, etc. But there's also this kind of challenge with being visible right now, because it feels a little bit unsafe to be different. It feels a little bit unsafe to be visible. It also feels a little bit like I was talking about earlier in the broadcast today, that these platforms that we have to be on, we're just creating content for tech billionaires. You know what I'm saying? And like, when you don't agree with their worldview, you don't really want to make them richer. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's tough because you're trying to live in integrity within these systems that aren't built for integrity. They're built for profit. And I don't have a great answer to that right now. Like I said, I've been doing research. I've been reading books about how to create a new way of being. But it feels like a little bit of a stuck point. And I think that this first quarter moon is going to really poke that point a little bit, potentially. What I would say is we probably are going to have to get over it and become a little bit more visible and have courage to become visible so that we can be in service of that sun and make plans to increase our material prosperity. I think that's just a reality that many people are going to have to face around this first quarter moon. Let's see. Rose says, focus on where you're wealthy with. Okay, we got that. Mare says, thank you for the fructan share. This could help one of my family members. I'll look into it. New to me. Good. Mare, it was a revolutionary change. It was a very Uranian, like, oh my God, this is completely eliminating gastrointestinal pain. I was really starting to struggle. I'd always struggled with kind of some digestive issues, even as a young person, but it was because I was pretty allergic to this sugar. I didn't digest the sugar. But it got a lot worse in my 40s to the point where I was getting like nerve pain because of it. And it literally instantly went away when I stopped eating that stuff that has fructan in it, and when I started using this enzyme on stuff. You can also get there's an app called, these are FODMAPs, by the way. So this is, if you look up FODMAPs, and there's an app that I'll share with you too, Mare, that it shows you what foods have these different digestive challenging enzymes. Because there's different ones. There's fructan, there's gluten, there's other things that people can't digest. Oh shit, what is this? First of all, let me see. It's called FODMAP. It's an app called, it's the Monash University FODMAP diet. And there's an app for it where you can look up different foods that have these things in it, and you can set it to give you like a red, yellow, or green, So like, for example, artichokes have a lot of fructan in them. It's something you wouldn't think that would not make you feel good. Here's like a example of artichokes with the fructan. And there's other things like fructose, lactose, sorbitol, etc. And this that idea just changed my life. So if it can help someone else, I will talk about it. I know it's not always the sexiest thing to talk about, but man, if we can just alleviate someone's discomfort, I mean, why not, right? Okay, so that's our first quarter moon. Let's kind of look at the end of the month here. I think that the big turning point in the month is that 19th through the 22nd-ish time. That's, if we get over that hump, yes, we have some other things going on, but that's really like the hot spot for the month, where there's going to be I think some big stuff in the collective, some big either revelations, some big somethings. I don't know what that is yet, but I'm both nervous and curious. It's like a little bit of a morbid curiosity, but I would love nothing more than things to be quiet and peaceful. I don't really like embrace some of these stupidity type of things, but if it moves the needle towards restoring sanity, then so be it. Venus moves into Gemini on the 24th. And, this is Venus moving out of her own domicile in Taurus, moving into a space now where she's going to be hosted by Mercury in Aries. The options explode. Like when we solve an old issue, then we we got new options. Maybe we can, if we take our example that we just have, if we solve an issue about foods that we thought we couldn't eat, and we learn about what we actually can, we have more options. Do you see what I mean? We solve an issue, and then that opens up a possibility. The only challenge with this Venus moving into Gemini here is that we might feel overwhelmed with options. So we have to kind of think things through and say, how do we focus on the things that are most important to us? We may be feeling attracted to being like a little bee and visiting all the little different flowers and gathering information. So that could be part of what Venus and Gemini process is about, is gathering more information, gathering more perspectives so that we can move forward with grace. That being said, the day after that, it's got a lot going on. We've got a Sun-Pluto square. Okay, so here's the Sun at 5 degrees of Taurus, Pluto at 5 degrees of Aquarius, and our good friend Uranus is joining Venus in Gemini. Okay, now I will say this. The Uranus ingress into Gemini this year is moving with Venus, which is good. When Uranus moves into Cancer in like 7 years, it's moving with Saturn, which is not as good because Saturn is not super happy in Cancer. So I do think that there is a little bit more of a gentler transition with Uranus into Gemini than Uranus into Cancer that is coming. But this is a big shift. There's a revelation of corruption with the Sun squaring Pluto that we've talked about that could lead to feelings of scarcity or fear of scarcity that might necessitate us to plant new seeds and to plan for our security moving forward because of things that are out of our control or bigger than us. Uranus moving into Gemini, again, shocks of communication, warp speed advancement of some of these technologies, but also on the flip side, hubris around them. We've talked about pushing back against data centers and trying to get some common sense legislation around it, even if you aren't like 100% against AI, which I know some of you probably use it a little bit. I've dabbled with some of it, but I've since kind of trying to remove myself from using it almost completely. It's hard because it's kind of integrated in a lot of different spaces already without really us even asking for it. But I do think at the very minimum, at the very least, putting common sense guardrails in place to protect people's privacy, to protect people's data, to protect people's creative output, and to make sure that we understand how those systems are interacting with our consciousness. And they say this a couple of ways, and this is in relationship to Uranus and Gemini. Here's my philosophical take on Uranus and Gemini. Those algorithms already, as part of just the internet and how we interact on the internet, are already designed, literally designed. It's been admitted that they are designed to manipulate our attention for the specific purpose of keeping us engaged on the app so that those companies can make profit. It is not a mystery. That's not a conspiracy theory. That is what most of these apps, including YouTube, are designed to do. Keep us on the app, keep us interacting with the ads. Really, that's really what it is. It also has been proven to have been able to manipulate the way that people think, the way that people vote, the way that people create or experience conflict with one another through forcing them into echo chambers, etc. This is going to be driven into overdrive with Uranus and Gemini, the splitting of attention, the manipulation of our attention. It's gotten so dangerous now because not only are we being manipulated into the algorithm, now we're getting to the point where the technology is so good, we can't reasonably tell what we're beginning to not reasonably be able to tell what is real and what is not. And that to me is extraordinarily dangerous, extraordinarily dangerous. When we lose the ability to trust our eyes and our ears and our senses, that leaves us very vulnerable to corruption, manipulation, gaslighting. We become very vulnerable. So we have to start asking questions about the nature of reality. We have to start asking questions on whether this technology is really necessary or not. And what is it doing to the way that we think with Gemini, right? The ideas that we have. Are these ideas our own? Or have we been manipulated by a giant corporate entity that sole purpose is to keep us on their platforms to sell us products? Or to influence elections so that they can install surveillance technology to scrape our data to sell us more products? Or to win elections to install people that will dysregulate these types of technologies so that they can build more technology and sell us more products? It's all connected like that. And this isn't some huge conspiracy theory. This is like how things are functioning now in late stage capitalism. These things are on record. Like, we need to understand how we are interacting with the technologies that we are consuming and take back some agency around it and not get so blind to those facts or so ambitious with these technologies that we don't ask the hard questions around what types of limitations they have or should have. Things are moving so quickly right now. And when Uranus moves into Gemini for good, they're going to move even quicker. The time period that we have as far as being able to control these technologies is rapidly diminishing. Now, that doesn't mean that necessarily the AI is going to immediately become smarter than a human, etc., although it's a possibility. But I think that what we're doing that I'm more concerned about is offloading the ability to think to the AI. We are complicit in allowing it to control our lives because we are refusing to do things the hard way. When you want to ask a question in ChatGPT, you want things to be easy. You want things to be fast. You want instant gratification. When you do things the hard way, when you learn things slower, when you ask tough questions, when you ask another human being to teach you how to do something over time, what you're doing is you're creating neural pathways that would entropy or decay if you were to just outsource that to the AI itself. People don't know how to write a sentence anymore. People don't know how to think critically anymore. We're becoming complicit in allowing that AI to become our overlord. And that to me is very frustrating. And it's the same thing with creativity. We don't take the time to learn how to paint like Mayer has learned how to paint. We don't take the time to learn how to play an instrument or to learn how to sing or to learn that what makes our art beautiful sometimes is the mistakes that we make, the uniqueness of our imperfections. And what we do is we just homogenize it completely. And it will start consuming itself to where everything becomes just this glossy, homogenized bullshit. And we don't do the things that bring us joy anymore. What, we type a fucking sentence into a prompt to get some kind of art instead of going through the joyful process and sometimes the painful process of learning how to do something ourselves. So how do we avoid becoming complicit in our own slavery to this technology? That to me are the types of questions that both the Sun squaring Pluto and Uranus moving in Gemini will start to bring up. And I hope that by shining light on it, it helps to bring up some of these questions for you as well. Lauren says Uranus is ingressed into Gemini with Venus both times. Well, there you go. Kind of like Saturn did with Neptune, these couplings are forging signature energies that bridge for lengthier planetary stays of the outermost planets. Yep. Rose says, use it or lose it. Learn something new with this new Saturn. I love that. And retain your ability to think critically. Retain your ability to understand that if you don't use your critical faculties, your brain's going to be mush. And look at all these kids right now that are completely dependent on ChatGPT to write a paper or something like that. Yes, writing a paper sucks, but the point of the paper is not the finished product. That's not the point of the paper. The paper is about learning how to go do your research. The paper is learning how to take information and contextualize it in a way that is able to be communicated to someone else. You're learning valuable life skills while you're doing these tedious tasks. Same thing with art. You're learning about color value. You're learning about balance. You're learning about structure. You're learning about translating what you see in the world into what you can do with your hands on the page. And I would hate to see us lose the ability to do that without these crutches. You know, as someone who put years and years and years of study into not only being a musician, but also an astrologer, I would hate to see us lose the capability of being able to think critically and to be able to utilize those gifts rather than just being so obsessed with the end product and feeling like we have to keep up because everything is commodified. That's what really people are doing with this. They're saying, you know what? I don't have time. This is what they're saying. And I feel this a little bit. This is a struggle. They're like, I don't have time to do that slowly. I have to flood the zone with so much stuff or slop to be able to keep up, to be able to make money doing this. There's something fundamentally wrong with that we have to like feel like we have to catch up or to create all of this garbage so that we can just be allowed to survive. I push back on that fundamentally with every ounce of my being because I believe in slow and steady process. I believe in growth, healthy growth over time. I believe in the power of each individual unique human being to be able to utilize their own critical thinking facilities and their own artistic vision that doesn't necessarily have to be, scraped from the internet and other people's unique individual things stolen and then fed through a series of ones and zeros. Rose says, the only AI I want to use if I could afford it is the new Chepso astrology app. I don't know much about that, Rose. I know that Nightlight just did a thing about it, but I don't know. I don't have enough information to know if that's a good use of AI or not. I would also push back on astrologers putting their charts into AI models, learning models, because what they're doing is they're putting the chart and they're asking it like horary question, for example, and they're using their own knowledge to correct it when it's wrong, basically training it to replace you as a horary astrologer. I don't understand the logic with people who are doing that. I don't understand it for the life of me. Same thing with people that are feeding their art into the AI learning model and you just training it to replace the relationships that can help communities to build something. I think about a guy like I don't know, this isn't a great example, but think about any successful musical artist. Let's take Michael Jackson for an example. I just was the first person that popped into my head. Your mileage may vary on him, but Michael Jackson wasn't just a unique singular vision. He had Quincy Jones helping him in the studio. He had all those studio musicians. He had all the creative minds that were put together to create something beautiful that lasted the test of time. You know what? This is the kind of thing we think that artists are these like individual islands, but they're not. These beautiful works of art, like take a beautiful movie like The Lord of the Rings. There's so many people involved in it, and each had an individual role and a place of genius within it. And we just feed all that into the wood chipper that is AI. All of those relationships cease to be. And I think that's really sad. I think there's something sad about that. I understand how seductive it could be. I understand that the desire to want to turn a vision into reality instantaneously is very seductive. But at what cost? Is it at the cost of our relationships? Is it at the cost of our earth, really, when it comes to like the environmental impacts as well? Lauren says, oh my God, that reminds me that though the AstroSeek was down for several days because AI scraper bots overwhelmed the server. So get ready, because AI is definitely coming after this particular divinity. It's already coming after it. I see advertisements on Instagram, etc., about these assholes that have created AI astrology apps. And they're like, look, I made this AI astrology app, and you can just, this is like your AI best friend, and you can ask it any question you want at any time. And it's so fucking toxic. I don't like it. Rose says, I watched Austin and DB and they wrote the whole program with the help of a good programmer and have been tweaking it for almost 2 years already. I trust their integrity. Nick Dagan Best is NBD. Like I said, I don't know enough about it to comment on it. I will look into it. I think it's any program that can be helping traditional astrologers, that's fine, but I would be just very careful of anything that uses the AI stuff. I don't think that we completely understand the ramifications of it yet. And when that's and this has been true for humanity, you know, in general, but I really wish that humanity would take into account the collateral damage of universal adoption of a new technology and try their best to mitigate the worst parts of that. We've seen it with, like, you know, industrialization. We've seen it with television, the printing press, radio, etc. All these things. There was collateral damage with some of that. And then eventually what was a free thing, oh God, you're going to get me on a rant, friends. I don't know if you all saw this, but Sam Altman, who's the biggest fucking piece of shit on the planet, basically said, we're going to feed all of your ideas. We're going to feed all of your art. We're going to feed all of these things that we promised you were going to be open source with OpenAI, ChatGPT, OpenAI. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make it like a public utility where you have to pay money to access all of this intelligence, where all of your ideas, art, and intelligence is going to get fed into this thing. And guess who's going to profit from it? Me, Sam Altman, right? You're going to pay me to access all of your shared history, your shared art, your shared intelligence. No, fuck that. Right? Fuck all that. Fuck him and fuck AI. All right? Like, he's going to charge you for the history of human creativity as a utility after he stole it from you. After, like we're saying with the AI bots that are scraping these sites for information. You know who created AstroSeek? A person. You know who programmed all that shit in there? A person who understood astrology. And they're just scraping this to be able to steal it, to be able to put it behind a paywall so that you have to pay the billionaire for access to it. Do you see where this goes wrong? Something to consider. Rose says they have full control. Yeah, I don't want to hear more about Nichepso. I don't actually give a shit about Nichepso. I'm sorry. I'm feeling the Aries energy today. If it uses AI, I'm not really a fan of it. The end of story. And I know I'm going to have to change this perspective potentially, but like, consider where you are putting your money, where you're putting your brain. Like, don't put it into the hands of a billionaire class that just wants to bleed you dry from it. All right? Like, end of story. Rachel says a lot of my coworkers use it for helping with writing, and I've had people urge me to use it to help with workflow, but I am a writer at home and at work. I don't want it to replace me. Exactly. And here's the thing. If you don't have an area of genius with writing, hire somebody that does. Work with somebody that does. Let's start exchanging skills and embrace the people that have put time and energy into writing. Hire Rachel Fletcher to help you with your writing instead of just like, you know, I don't know. I cannot push back on that system enough. And I wasn't this black or white about it in the beginning. I had some really difficult conversations and thoughts around it at first. But until we can democratize that technology, okay, so that it isn't controlled by the billionaire class, it will be a problem. Yeah, I don't really care about this. We have things to talk about. I don't have patience for this conversation right now. Sorry about that, but this is Aries. This is Aries sun coming through. I'm just too emotional about it. I'm sorry, friends. I didn't have a lot in the tank left today anyway, but like, I don't really have enough centeredness to go on what could be a really difficult, hopefully maybe more nuanced conversation. I don't have the nuance necessary today to like get into it. Maybe Nichepso's great. Maybe Austin and Nick Dagan Best have thought about these things in great detail. Maybe Adam Ellenboss has thought about this in great detail. But I don't know if there's enough people that are pushing back on the negative parts of this. Maybe Nichepso is part of this. Maybe it isn't. I don't know enough about it to like speak with authority on that particular thing. But I do know that there are people like Sam Altman that are scraping the internet without your permission, that are trying to turn your ideas and your art into a quote unquote utility that benefits them and that will atrophy your brain. So think about that for a second. And also, let me just push back on just these computer programs too. I understand that it makes astrology easier. I would also put forward that understanding how to read a chart without the program telling you everything that it's supposed to tell you is important. Like, we went through, as astrologers, years of training to be able to like read this chart without necessarily having some computer program do it for us. You know, like being able to recognize when you see a malefic enclosure, being able to recognize when you see something coming out in phasis. Yes, it makes things quicker, but you should be able to look at the chart and see that for yourself without having it do it for you. That's my opinion. Call me a Luddite if you will. So it goes. All right. Venus sextiles Neptune on the 26th. And Mercury squares Jupiter. Whoa, man. Aries is speaking through me today. I just am out of fucks to give about this. This is an issue that makes me really irritated. And it's a new sensation, like NXS said in the song of the week. We've got a couple more aspects to go, and then we'll take a break. We'll lean into the Aries spring equinox. Maybe we'll go take a walk and connect with nature, calm down a little bit. This is the energy of this month. I think this is just the energy that's coming through in this month. It's combative. It lacks patience. It is divisive. It's exhausting. And we'll have to figure out ways to get through it, but I'm not at my best with it. Venus sextiles Neptune, Mercury squares Jupiter on the 26th. So here we've got, I don't know, Mercury squaring Jupiter. Again, this is another Aries Cancer square where we're going to be wanting to state our royal decrees, and it may be coming into conflict with the needs of the group or the community. So we may have some really individual opinions. Maybe it's like what, it's interesting where we get to in the chat. Maybe my individual opinion about a technology doesn't necessarily match up with the where the group is at with it, or with the collective, or with other people in the industry. I mean, sometimes that's going to happen. Sometimes you're going to have a strong opinion about something that other people aren't going to agree with, or you may not have enough information about something to have that strong opinion. I know that I feel negatively about artificial intelligence in general. I hope that there will be some useful, ethical, responsible people that get involved with it, so that it isn't just run by sociopaths. But we'll have to see, and we'll have to live into those answers. Venus will trine Pluto on the 28th. So this is kind of the antidote, I guess, to the Venus-Pluto square that we are experiencing. Now maybe we're seeking out options. We're seeking out possibilities to deal with some of the problems that came up during the Venus-Pluto square. Then Venus is going to be at the bending of the nodes on the 29th. So Venus is going to square the nodes at 7 degrees of Gemini, squaring the north node in Pisces and the south node in Virgo. Really, this is a turning point for Venus where we are at a peak of increase. When you have the Venus at the, I believe this is the north bending, you have the peak of increase, the peak of when Venus conjoined the north node in Pisces, and it is now starting to move towards the south node in Virgo, moving towards a place of decrease. So really take a look at what was going on the 17th of February, when Venus was conjoining the north node at 8 degrees of Pisces, around the new moon solar eclipse at 28 degrees of Aquarius, and take a look at where it might be going by July the 10th of 2026, when Venus makes a conjunction with the south node at 0 degrees of Virgo on Regulus. So those are the dates to keep in mind with Venus at the bending of the nodes. This might affect your Taurus and Libra area of your chart as well. So keep an eye on those topics as well. Finally, we have Mercury going under the beams of the sun on April the 30th. All right. Mercury, going under the beams of the sun, going into that 15-degree arc of separation. So this is a point where Mercury, is going under the beams of the sun and is getting ready to be renewed in the heart of the sun in May, in mid-May, okay, when it is around 23 degrees of Taurus. So pay attention to what needs to be let go of related to the Gemini and the Virgo area of your chart around this period of time, and what wants to be renewed around that period. I also wanted to keep you abreast of the information that the full moon is going to be happening right at the beginning of May too. It's not necessarily part of April, but the moon is going to be waxing to fullness really the day after April. So keep in mind that there's a full moon coming in the very beginning of May. All right, friends. That's your broadcast for the day. My goodness. All right, friends. Appreciate you being here. I appreciate the ability to have difficult conversations. Rose says, I drew my first chart by hand in 1989. It took 3 hours. And you know what? That was a great exercise, right? That is a unique skill. And that's a hard thing to do. I drew hand charts like when in the late 90s, early 2000s, just on paper as well before these programs. It's a lot easier using Astro Gold and things like that. I get it. But I push back on just outsourcing all of these things to the technology without learning process. My main point with this is don't get sucked into the results over process argument. We are being forced into being pushed into more and more productivity, quote unquote. And it's making us not think about the means that justify the ends. What is the process that we go through? I'm a process-driven person. And when we lose touch with being able to be process-driven, we sometimes get so focused on the end goal that we miss the point of it entirely, right? I really feel strongly about that. So I think that how do we balance out what we're trying to achieve with the process that it takes us to get there? The process of making art is not to necessarily have that finished product that's perfect all the time. The process of making art is to catharsis, right? It's getting out the emotions that you're trying to express. And that's part of a process. If you just type in a sentence, you're not getting out the emotion the same way as you would if you actually sat down on your guitar and bashed it to hell, like playing a riff. You know what I'm saying? It's different. It's different. There's a visceralness to it. And this is the Gen X side of me coming out. This is the grunge artist of me coming out. Okay? That says, no, man, like there's something about your fingers starting to bleed when you make that chord, rather than just pressing a button or typing in a sentence to make that song. I've had bloody thumbs from performing for 4 hours at I don't know, a gig. There's something about it. There's sacrifice involved in that. It's just not the same when you just let someone else do it for you, you know? Rose says, I refuse to be sucked into the negative side. Still love you. I love you too, Rose. It's just, there are always two sides to something. And if we ignore negativity, if we ignore darkness, we're just whitewashing things. Like I refuse to whitewash things, Rose. And I used to do that. And we can still be positive and still call things out at the same time. It is an act of love sometimes to do so. I say the things that I say because I do love my community. I do love humanity. I do love the artist in you. That passion comes from a strong protective instinct to protect the artist in you, to protect the thinker in you, to protect your data and your privacy and your rivers and your forests and your resources and your communities and diversity, rather than feeding everything into the wood chipper and making it some homogenized AI slop bullshit. That's what that comes from. It comes from love. And sometimes love doesn't feel like it should, but hurts so good, right? Painted Turtle says you need to write a song called Me Against the Machine to express and process your very valid frustrations. Yeah, I could use some guitar sessions soon, Lauren. You all would be amazed to see some of the songs I wrote during like the first after the Twin Towers and the Gulf War and like crap like that. I also, if you really want to hear Spencer rage against the machine, like I have a song called Burn Your Empire Down that you can find on SoundCloud, Spencer Michaud Music, which I wrote during the first Trump administration when they were trying to deport people. And there's a bridge that both my partner and my daughter sang on that is a poem that's on the Statue of Liberty, talking about lifting our golden lamps. We will lift our golden lamp and welcome, send me your tired, send me your poor, your wretched refuse from your teeming shore. Yeah, there's been a lot of that type of art that I've made in the past, and you're right, it's probably overdue to make some more. Rachel says, blood, sweat, and tears. Absolutely, Rachel. Lauren says, because the interesting thing about your work, Spencer, is that you have compiled the works of others in a really useful and digestible way for the viewer of your D&D and Decans videos in a way. Yes, but I agree with that. Let's spend some time on this real quickly. At every point, the difference between me and the AI chatbot and the generative AI is that I cite my sources. Every single time I mention in this broadcast Austin Coppock in 36 Faces, Susie Chang, 36 Secrets, talk about when I find an idea from my teacher at Nightlight Astrology, or when I have something that I find from Charles Eisenstein or Tolkien. I cite my sources. Culture does not just erupt out of the void. We are constantly taking in and processing other people's work. That is how culture works. But the way that AI is doing it is taking all of that work, not asking any permission or giving any credit, throwing it through the homogenizer, and then charging you to access it in the future. Do you see what I mean? There's a difference. There is a difference. And I like being an interpreter, and I liked being a cover artist as a musician. Part of the way I built my career was through doing these Jeff Buckley tributes. I like playing other people's music, but it is a tribute to that artist. It is not a let's steal every single idea they had without lineage and then charge someone for it. Lineage is important. I'm a fierce defender of lineage as well. Yes, I trained with Nightlight, but I also feel like a person like Austin Coppock is a teacher for me. Chris Brennan was a teacher for me. He was my first exposure to traditional astrology. Demetri George is a teacher for me. All of these people are teachers, and they paved the way. But their teachers were Robert Hand, the Schmidt. There's their lineage. Their teachers were Vedius Valens and Ptolemy. It's important to acknowledge that, and it's important to preserve that. That is a preservation of that lineage. And that's the lineage of artists as well, of teaching and learning. And it doesn't mean we have to own all these ideas. It just means that we need to acknowledge what the sources that they came from and preserve those original sources as well. Okay, so that other people can learn from those lineages. That's important to me. Lauren says that only you can do and talk through to connect the human to the idea. Contemplation of a spirit is a human communicated thing, and they make sense because they are channeled through a human. Not that animals don't have or communicate a spirit in their way, but they don't need to contemplate it. They live their spirit. Yeah. What is Medica? Rose, what is it? Says I would not trust any Medica. What's Medica? Anyway, what are you quitting, Rose? What are you quitting here? Nobody needs to quit. We're just having a discussion. Okay, I agree, Lauren, and I agree that we do have to filter this through our human consciousness. But I do think we need to ask some tough questions. And I do think that we shouldn't just wholesale adopt things, and we should look underneath the hood of these technologies and understand the very real ramifications of what it could mean for us as human beings. We should have done that with the internet too, when the internet came around. But we did wholesale adoptions. Eventually, a new technology that was open, that was democratized, eventually became corporatized and completely filled with, monetization, to the point where we have young people feeling like the only commodity that they have to give or to gain is people's attention. And are they really living their true self, or are they living a mask of what they hope that the algorithm will support? These are philosophical questions that we need to ask, right? That we need to ask. All right, friends. I do have an I-Ching and an animal for you, and it's very appropriate today. Okay, here is the hexagram for April. It's number 6, conflict. To number 12, standstill. Some of the most challenging hexagrams in the I-Ching. So conflict, number 6, translates also to contention, arbitration, demanding justice, speaking out. The judgment says, in conflict, be sincere, be prudent in dealing with obstruction. To halt halfway brings good fortune. To carry things through to the end brings misfortune. It is beneficial to see a great person. It is not beneficial to cross the river. Conflicts arise when two people believe they are right and their interests have become opposed. This may be because the parties have not been communicating with each other effectively, or because they no longer trust each other. And if the parties are strangers, then they have never had the chance to communicate or develop trust. Thus, if you wish to understand conflict, you must understand its beginnings. If you do not believe that you are in the right, you should not become involved in conflict. This is true, both as a moral and a practical matter. If you do not believe in yourself or in the justness of your cause, you will not win a fight with a determined opponent. Indeed, you should never go into combat without a sincere commitment to success or without understanding your goals in advance. Conflict is a matter of values, not a matter of force. If you do not fight to vindicate values that you believe in, there is no point in going forward. Even if you have superior strength, dominating another when you know that you are wrong does not mean that you have won. It only means that you have debased yourself through the use of violence or trickery. Be prudent in dealing with obstruction. Means that you should not rush into conflicts thoughtlessly. Because a struggle destroys the resources of both parties, it is always better to explore how direct confrontation can be avoided. Try to adjust matters and reach a settlement before conflicts grow and get out of hand. Open lines of communication and try to establish trust and reciprocity. I lost my place. I'm reading from Jack Balkin's The Laws of Change, which is an excellent book. Attempting to reach accommodation keeps each side from wasting valuable capital and even produce unexpected synergies. Nevertheless, some things are simply worth fighting for, and if there's no other choice, conflict becomes a necessity. Indeed, conflict and a show of strength is sometimes necessary as a prerequisite to later agreement. If you find yourself in a conflict, remain calm and collected. A conflict is a potentially dangerous situation. It can easily spin out of control if you do not pay careful attention. Having entered into it, you must now find a way out of it. The most aggressive approach is not always the best one. You should first decide exactly what you want to achieve and what you accept as a satisfactory ending to the conflict. Unless you know what your goals are, you will not be able to plan an effective strategy. By prolonging conflict without a clear plan or direction, you may destroy something very valuable in the process. Not only what belongs to your adversary, but what belongs to yourself. Once you have begun a conflict with another, you must have the inner strength and confidence to settle your dispute and to meet your opponent halfway. Sounds a little bit like that full moon in Libra, right? Often this requires courage every bit as great as the courage to fight on. The secret of success in conflict is not the ability to prevail. It is the ability to compromise. If you cannot compromise, every conflict must become either an ignominious defeat or a fight to the death. But if you have the ability to compromise, you can turn a deadly conflict into a potential source of growth and improvement. Nevertheless, you will be able to reach an effective compromise only when you know what your own values are and your goals truly are, and when you are willing to give up what you are willing to give up in order to get them. If you're confused about what you want, you will find it difficult to end a conflict without great loss. This is why the text suggests that in conflict you must be sincere. You must be honest with yourself at each stage of the process, in getting into conflict and in carrying out the conflict forward and in getting out of it. Compromise becomes possible precisely because conflicts are conflicts of value as well as conflicts of interest and resources. By learning to respect and understand your opponent's values, you can find your way to a solution. The most successful compromises are those in which each side feels that they have gained something important or that some elements of its cause have been recognized and vindicated. Now there's two changing lines here. One changing line, Second place, unable to contend. One escapes the situation and returns home. The peoples of one's town, 300 households remain free of calamity. When you face an adversary who is stronger and has superior resources, discretion is no dishonor and retreat is no disgrace. Pride, an exaggerated sense of honor, and the desire to establish oneself all tempt people into conflicts with others. So too, ironically, does a sense of insecurity that makes a person lash out at others. Do not allow yourself to be drawn into open conflict when the odds are stacked against you, and do not rush off to fight battles that you are unlikely to win. People who meet defeat at the hands of a stronger power are often not the only ones who suffer. The loss also has unfortunate consequences for their friends, family, and those around them. Thus, if you withdraw from conflict at the right time, you can avoid disaster for yourself and those close to you. Wise conciliation and diplomacy spare a person's community from harm and keep allies, associates, and loved ones from being drawn into a potentially ruinous conflict. This is changing to hexagram number 12, standstill, stagnation, blockage, misfortune, disharmony, hindrance. Standstill. The inferior people do not further the perseverance of the superior person. The great depart, the petty arrive. This hexagram describes a time when heaven and earth are estranged and communication is difficult, if not impossible. People in different areas of life have lost touch with each other. Social relations have broken down and disorder proliferates. The time is truly out of joint. Because people cannot cooperate, they cannot make progress. Because people pursue only their narrow self-interest and regard everyone else as rivals and enemies, harmony and reciprocity will wither away. In a time of standstill, petty and inferior people are on the rise. Their bad habits, small-mindedness, selfishness, and meanness poison the atmosphere of social life. People of goodwill and enlightenment must persevere through this difficult time, keeping a low profile. They should not count on the assistance of intolerant, shallow, and fawning people, for the latter seek only to maximize their own glory and power. Indeed, during a time of this standstill, the petty make sport of people of integrity and hinder their progress at every turn. Enlightened people should not contribute to the disharmony and mean-spiritedness of the time. They should not be tempted to surrender their principles in order to advance. In these circumstances, they cannot exert much influence. Therefore, they should remain faithful to their values and wait until better days arrive. I mean, kind of says, hang out. Don't perpetuate negativity, right? Let's see what we've got here in the chat. Lauren says, trying to control the laws of the internet or the AI is like chasing your own tail. Instead of spinning, center yourself in autonomy. What is a squirrel and what is your tail attached either way? To the sovereign head of the dog. I mean, that's great and everything, but here's the thing. These huge data centers, Lauren, are just going in our backyards. These huge data centers are sucking up the water that we as communities need. These huge data centers are taking farmable land away from our communities in real time and driving up energy prices, etc. Like it has effects on us. It's not just like, oh, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to center yourself. There are real problems, real environmental issues, real intellectual issues that, yes, you can try to be an island, but this is a communal problem. And you're the one that started this, Lauren. You're the one that was like calling this out as a really dangerous thing, rightfully so. So I'm giving you your flowers here. This is your time to take a dump on AI and tell us about the dangers of it. And I know that is not necessarily what we're here to do, but help us out here, friend. Lauren says, so many times in this life, the skill of disengagement, when, why, and how to do so grants us the power to see straight enough to move forward in any case at an undizzying pace. Yeah, I think you're right. Rose says, that helped me. I think it's time for me to start buying Area Booked again. Buying Area. Real books again. Okay, yes. I agree with that. Buy real books. Support authors. I think that this is why I've been compiling a large library. This large library I have, a billionaire is not going to be in control of it. A corporate entity is not in control of my personal library. If they decide that they want to charge $1 million for the information that had been available for free, well, they're not going to be able to take my books away, hopefully. So yeah, buy real books. All right, I've got one more thing for you. And then Spencer's going to take a woods walk and chill out for the weekend and try to calm this Aries energy down. So I'm sorry, friends. I'm not trying to fight with any of you. I'm just feeling really fired up. And there's a lot of trigger issues in this for me. And I'm feeling really tired is what I'm feeling. Feeling really exhausted emotionally with some of the challenges that have been going on. And it doesn't lend me the centeredness and grace to be able to see both sides, to be able to mask some of my stronger feelings, as I often try to do on this channel, to try to be a voice of reason. I just don't have it in me today. And I'm sorry if it's come off too aggressive or too all or nothing. That's not how I generally enjoy acting or being, but it's just so much going on in the collective. And I think this anger is masking a lot of sadness and a lot of disillusionment today also. So if we can get in touch with the core issues, I'm really sad for what we're losing through some of these advancements. I'm sad about what we're losing through some of the monetization of every single part of culture. And I hope that we can survive what's coming next. You know, I hope that we can. Rachel says, thank you for sharing your Library of Alexandria with us. Oh, I appreciate you, Rachel. I'm doing my best to be a conduit for that information and not to hoard the knowledge, and to just spending hours here with all of you trying to share what I've learned. And I'm not going to be right about everything. Some of my opinions are going to be just my hot emotional take in the moment. I also, Rachel, reserve the right to change my mind with new information. At this point today, I'm feeling really, really disillusioned about AI and about its usefulness, about its exploitive nature to people and to the environment. If something changes in the future, I reserve the right to change my mind about it. And I think that that's the best we can do sometimes when we have strong feelings about things. We can maybe express where we're at in this moment and then reserve the right to change and to change if something is shown to us. I think that that's important. Like, I think that Lauren says change always begins at the individual level is what I'm saying. We cannot enforce the use of open source anything, and that is the point of it, to create chaos. The first step is orient yourself around the truth and action. I agree with that. And, you know, Lauren was a catalyst for me kind of doing more research about this technology. Lauren had the type of reaction that I had today 6 months ago, you know, and she and I butted heads about it. Lauren, sorry, but I didn't have enough more information. Her passionate response helped me to understand the ramifications of trying to adopt something before actually researching it. So sometimes our passion and our strong feelings and our pushback can actually help people to come into the light. And I'm grateful for Lauren in particular for that. So yeah, how do we get clear on our own particular, viewpoints? And how do we learn more about these things as it's changing so quickly around us? Let's see. Lauren says Rose says we are keepers of what we choose not to lose and what we choose to share. A changeable mind is a functional mind and alive. Yes. I had your reaction 2 weeks ago. So I'm not an early adapter, Rose. I'm a late adapter. And sometimes my emotions have it takes me a little bit longer to get to the boiling point. As a Taurus moon, I will absorb and absorb and absorb, and then sometimes the volcano just erupts. And today was maybe one of those volcanic eruptions. But I feel a little bit better being honest about my feelings. Sorry if you had to be in the face of it. If you were expecting, you know, Dad Spencer, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Miyagi type Spencer, We all have our breaking points. We all have our emotional points. And hopefully we can just be a little bit more in our authenticity in the moment. Speaking of that, we've got an animal for you, okay? Our animal today is the bear. An animal that you don't want to mess with, but also can be calm, but also can be very fierce. I'm going to read to you from Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez about the bear today. Bear symbolizes a fierce strength and a gentle nature that is often underestimated. There is agility and lightning speed tucked inside a body that looks as if it would be cumbersome and slow. Sounds like your favorite Taurus moon friend. Bear means being introspective, taking time to carefully examine your thoughts, feelings, and ideas through soul searching, to come to decisions without outside influences of other people's opinions. There is a need for time away from others to revive and reflect within. Bear is loyal to a fault. He has a great deal of integrity and has a protective nature, especially for loved ones. A heightened sense of smell enables you to sniff out the truth. Bear also enables you to see visions and have strong intuition. It encourages you to be your own advisor. It has talents for agility, contentment, courage, introspection, intuition, knowing when to back down and when to fight, loyalty, peacefulness, reflectiveness, soul searching, speed, strength, and getting to the truth of the matter. There are challenges about becoming a loner, becoming a rogue, losing sight of your inner truth of the goals that you want to reach. Poor judgment, reclusiveness, rigidity, stubbornness. This is our spirit animal for the day today. Bear often appears when you need to take time away for yourself so you can revive and find your center or balance. It can indicate a need for more rest, extra sleep, and downtime when you're frazzled by life. It can mean that you'll need to protect someone, to reflect on a situation you're not sure about. This is a need to stick to your beliefs without compromise. Seeing bear means to look beyond a person's physical appearance to what's inside. Bear also appears when you have lost your way or when you need to reconnect with your inner self at a soul level. To really know your path, you must know your true self. Take quiet time just for yourself. Use this time to silently contemplate your mind, body, and spirit to move forward. You may need healing at this time, either physically, spiritually, or emotionally, and it's important to find balance and get plenty of rest. You're a survivor with plenty of new ideas and assertiveness to bring forth those ideas to fruition. Don't hide, but step out and take what is yours. It assists you when you need to boost your strength and energy or have trouble making a decision. If you feel betrayed by someone, Bear can help you understand not only your own feelings, but the reasons for someone else's actions. It offers guidance and self-discovery and on the physical and spiritual planes. Bear assists us when you're searching for an answer and can help you get to the truth of the matter. So a need to maybe go off, introspect, to calm down a little bit, to get clear on your own energy while trying to navigate the chaos of all the things. It's good advice. It feels like something I could use at the moment. I'm going to check in with the chat here. Rose says, safe space here. I'm wearing a bear ring. I love it. Beautiful bears, Rachel says. Yes, I love the bears. Except for, I don't love the Chicago Bears. I love the nature bears. Rose says, I got in Yellowstone in 1989. Yellowstone was my Pluto line astrocartography chart. My stepdad's cabin was near Yellowstone. Beautiful. Well, friends, thank you for hanging out with me today. Thank you for holding space for each other, for myself. Thank you for sticking around, even with some different emotions expressed today. I think that as we all come into alignment with wisdom, with our authenticity, as we all come to terms with what's happening in our worlds around us, there's going to be times where we feel and have to process strong emotions. Today was a day that I feel like I was processing some of these emotions in public, in real time. And doing this work, there's always the danger of doing that. And I don't know if I need to apologize for it. I just need to recognize that we sometimes are going to have extreme things that we feel. And if you have a difference of opinion or a difference of whatever, I think it's okay to like respect that difference and try to work towards figuring out what we really where our lines are. And be, like you said, be flexible and open to new information coming in. To be able to express our frustration when we feel it though too. I think a lot of us in the past have tried to sanitize our images, our feelings, the way that we express ourselves. I know I've done it in the past for fear of disapproval. I'm just being honest with you today. I feel a lot of anger right now, and a lot of fear, and a lot of sadness. And I can't just keep bottling it up and trying to pretend that everything is okay in my world when it isn't. And if that's the best thing that we can do, is just be honest with each other without being destructive. If in the expression of strong emotions today I hurt anybody's feelings or was overly destructive, that I apologize for. But I do think it's important for us to be able to feel our feelings strongly, express, speak truth to power, to punch up rather than down. Most of my anger today is directed towards corporate America, the billionaire class, corrupt individuals in government and in business, not to the individuals using these technologies, okay, necessarily, not to the fellow astrologers who are exploring new technologies. It's more so a more bigger picture kind of frustration. I also wanted to end today with a little bit of just a tribute to another astrologer that I don't talk about a lot on the channel, but recently passed away. Her name is J. Lee Lehman, and she was an excellent, excellent horary astrologer, in particular, medical astrologer. I have a number of her books. I met her briefly at the United Astrology Conference. She passed away this week, and she deserves to be remembered and acknowledged for the contributions that she made to our field in a time where we didn't have computer programs, when we didn't have AI. We just had a strong Virgo type that was really paying attention to the details and helped teach us how to do these things with grace and with great attention to detail and with great attention to process. And she's going to be missed. So thank you, J. Lee Lehman, for your contributions to the world of astrology, and go seek out their books and their work. And I think that we need more people like that in the world. So thank you, Jay. Thank you, Lee. Appreciate you. Thank you, those of you who stuck around to the end today. Appreciate you today. Rose says, oh, hold on a second. Rachel says, this is important and cathartic for me. Thank you. Go make some music, Rose says. It's time to do that. Do I play the drums? I'm not a drummer, but I got a neighbor that's a drummer. Maybe we'll team up and I can bang around on the electric guitar a little bit and he can play the drums. Lauren says, witnessing your emotional process, you Spencers, with that exalted moon in the 10th is your biggest asset and gift to give. Especially as a man, it is important how you navigate them in grace, and receive grace is also a part of the Cancerian story. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate you. And thank you for your courage in pushing back on these narratives early on in the story, and for helping me to understand some of the pros and cons of incorporating these things too early. And thank you for holding your ground in that. It's really admirable, and it was really helpful for me in this journey too. So thank you for being here and being a part of the community. And thank you for all of you who have been here today. I am going to type, here is J. Lee Lehman in the chat for you. I believe that's how you spell her name, or their name. I'm not sure what their pronouns are. But yeah, go check out their work. Really, really knowledgeable. There's a book of the martial art of horary, and also the book of rulerships. Really important. Tanya uses that every day in her Third Coast Mojo work. Okay. Lauren says, I'm glad that you're so real and raw. Just be careful as a fellow Cancer that you remember who you are and others are, and that the feelings aren't blinding. Absolutely. 100%. And here's the thing, feelings are ephemeral. And I think that sometimes we are not just the emotion. We can express the emotion, and sometimes we let it go. And then sometimes we come back around to our centeredness. All right, friends, that's what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for being part of the community here. Just one more thing here. Just in May, we're going to have 2 full moons, Scorpio and Sagittarius, a new moon in Taurus. Mercury and Mars are moving into Taurus. We have a Mercury Cazimi in Taurus 3, Sun and Mercury into Gemini, Venus into Cancer, and then there's a Mars-Pluto square that we'll talk about when we get to May. Do me a huge favor. Please like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you for sticking it out. If you want to follow me on social media, at Spencer Michaud. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. And you can find Tanya over at Third Coast Mojo. We got the guided group study starting very soon with the Silmarillion. I would love to have you join us for that. Reach out if it's not a if you don't have the resources to pay the full tuition. I'd be happy to work with you. I do sliding scales. I do pay what you can stuff. Don't make the price of it be a boundary. Let's just create some community together. Would love to have you along for that ride and for that journey. All right, my friends. That's what I've got. Rose says, Cancers rock. Yeah, we're all right. We're okay sometimes. But so is every other sign in the zodiac. Got some good things. Lauren says, feelings are also abilities. I love all of them. Yeah, acknowledging the positive and the negative ones, the strong ones and the gentle ones. It's all part of being a human, and that keeps us human. Okay? All right, friends. That's what I've got for you. Have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great rest of the April if you're listening to this after the fact. Let's center ourselves like the bears. Go take some walks in nature. Get out in our gardens. Get out in the real world a little bit. And try to be kind to one another through this. You can be angry at the systems, but when it comes to interactions with individuals, try to give people the benefit of the doubt and try to work through that foundation of kindness if you can. It's okay to be angry at the macrocosm, but in your individual relationships, try to give people grace. I think that's important as we move forward. All right, friends. Appreciate you and grateful for you as a community. Thank you, those of you who have put kind words in the chat, and we'll see you the next time. Okay, friends? Take care. Peace.